Hey guys, what's up? It is week 228, and first and foremost, I record these on Saturday, so Norm Macdonald just recently passed away, and I had already recorded the show and everything. I want to give a big shout out to Norm Macdonald, R.I.P. I was growing up in I was born in '86, so I watched a lot of SNL growing up, especially when he was on, along with other people like Chris Farley and Adam Sandler when I was very young. And me and my cousin just loved sketch comedy. We'd go back and we'd check out older ones. So we always had a fondness for the SNL 90s and early 2000s and even the 70s years. But Norm was probably one of my favorite comedians as a kid. Dirty Work was my all-time favorite comedy. Me and my friend Joe watched Dirty Work 50 to 60 times as a kid. Every time he'd come over, he'd say, "Let's watch Dirty Work again." And you know what? We had a lot of love for it. We always watched it. So in honor of Norm Macdonald, I'm going to cover Dirty Work. Made in 1998, directed by Bob Saget, of all people, who was a comedian as well. Well, when you first see that name, before you know a lot of comedians, different kind of things like that, you're like, Bob Saget from Full House? So, anyways, this movie is like the who's who of comedians. Lots of SNL alumni. Of course, it stars Norm Macdonald and Artie Lang from the Howard Stern Show, among other things. And other people that appear in it are, of course, who's the lady from, what was it? Three Guys and a Girl, or Dharma and Greg? I can't remember. One of these sitcom actresses is the love interest. She's really good in it. But besides that, Chris Farley has I think it's probably his last recorded performance, maybe besides that and Almost Heroes. He's fantastic in it. Jimmy. We also have Chevy Chase, Don Rickles, of all people. David Koechner is in here, Boyd Banks, Adam Sandler, Gary Coleman, Kenny Norton, Christopher O'Donnell, John Goodman. A lot of these are smaller roles, but they're absolutely perfect. And there's a fourth person from Billy Madison as well. There's three of them I already named. But we also have, he plays Martin in this movie. He is the guy who gives the infamous speech on Billy Madison's in any part of your incoherent rambling. He also has a kind of a role similar to that where he's absolutely hilarious. And I think that guy was actually an SNL writer, if I'm not mistaken. And I think a couple of the homeless guys are actually SNL writers. But these guys are just... It's absolutely probably one of the funniest, most raunchy on PC movies of all time. Jack Warden is also in it as Sam, Artie Lang's father. I'm sure I'm missing some other cameos in here because Rebecca Romaine Stamos. The cast is just amazing. There's so many good little bit roles and everything. So essentially what we have here is Norm Macdonald and Artie Lang are kind of two losers. And Artie Lang's father, he needs a heart transplant. And so it's up to them to start this revenge for hire business. Back in the day, as kids, they always used to get, they never take crap from anybody. But as they got older, they just kind of lost that. And they take crap from absolutely everybody, is what Norm says. So they end up trying to do this revenge for hire business to raise money to get their father a new heart. In that time, Norm falls in love, and they have all sorts of shenanigans. They end up doing a job for somebody who's corrupt, and they have to get revenge on them. So that's kind of the plot. Chevy Chase is a doctor in here who's always betting, and some of the lines in here, like I don't know how to go about this without just saying every funny line from the movie and laughing. I remember actually somebody in film class years ago. This is like entry film class in college. They actually used Dirty Work to show the how comedy works or something like that. That was their kind of little like thesis or something like that. And they showed the scene in Mazzetti's with Chris Farley with Jimmy hitting the wrong button when there's about that. And that whole scene is brilliant to me. And I know a lot of people love it because Chris Farley is just overacting and being hilarious, and he hits the wrong button. But I think it's really what makes that scene very funny to me is the dichotomy between Mazzetti and Jimmy. We have Mazzetti, who is just so bored. He's the bartender, so bored with his life and so bored with all of it. It seems like he's seen 100 bar fights, and he says, "Looks like there's going to be a brawl. Playing something good?" And Chris Farley standing by the jukebox is freaking out. Hell yeah, Rolling Stones G7. And he's like, Mazzetti's like, "You just hit G8. And of course, Holmes comes on, If You Like Pina Coladas, that song. absolutely hilarious, and there's a bar fight with that. But yeah, it's just endlessly quotable. And I know there was an R-rated version of this movie that was never released. And if you ever know these people, like Bob Saget's stand-up is raunchy as hell. And I'm surprised this movie got a PG-13 even for the time. There's a lot of really kind of raunchy stuff, a lot of on PC stuff, rape jokes, all sorts of stuff that just wouldn't fly nowadays. And that goes without saying. I mean, that's the dumb thing. Any movie that's a year old, it's like that probably wouldn't fly nowadays. But Norm's demeanor is really what gets me. He's a comedian that I don't know if his jokes, like if somebody else were to do his jokes, they would not be funny, which makes him so unique. He just has this demeanor and this delivery which is unmatched. He has the right pauses, the right time in between when he actually just lets it sit for a while, and then you kind of think about it or you register it, and it's just funnier every time. I absolutely love Norm Macdonald, and even in stuff like Screwed, which was a favorite of mine as well, which is not as popular as Dirty Work. And Dirty Work wasn't popular when it came out either. It kind of just gained that cult status, as it should, when you look at the talent involved with it. And so many funny people. Artie Lang in this cracks me up almost as much as Norm. I absolutely adore Artie Lang in this movie. There's a part where he tries to pick up this girl, and she's totally uninterested, and he's talking, and he's like, I'm Sam, and he puts his hand out to shake. He's like, I live with my dad. And it's just that's so good. Don Rickles is absolutely ruthless in here. Like I am trying so hard not to just go through and quote this. This is a movie that me and my friends would watch, and you didn't hear any of the movie. You literally just heard us quoting and laughing and giggling. And there's not only other like a couple movies that will do that to me. The other one is probably Billy Madison, which again has four of these people in it. There's just something about that energy that I absolutely love. I just can't speak anything negative about Dirty Work. Yeah, it's not we're not talking about The Godfather here, but when it goes to rate it for me, it literally is the movie that gets me to laugh the most. I've never laughed harder than I laughed at a movie in Dirty Work. And it also is like a warm blanket for me, just watching it at age 12 whenever it came out, and just absolutely adoring it. And like I said, Norm, you listen to all the people that knew Norm, all his friends and other comedians, and it just, nobody has a bad thing to say about Norm Macdonald. They all seem to love him. And yeah, it's just, he just had such a good style, and he was hilarious. And he pushed the boundaries, but he never came across as a complete bigot or anything like that. And I know that comedians' comedy is not safe or anything like that, but still, some of these guys, they just aren't very good comedians, and they lean into that extreme bullshit more than they have talent. So anyways, Dirty Work is a fantastic movie. The Blu-ray from Olive Films is a little lackluster. There's no special features. There's the trailer, which actually has a bit differences. If you watch a trailer, you notice the film they play at the movie theater to get back at Don Rickles is a different movie. In this one, it's something in the trailer, it's Harry Peters, which is a gay porno, and in this one, in the movie, it's Men in Black, who like to have sex with each other, also a gay porno. And it's just, like, everything about this movie cracks me up. Just a soft spot. Outdated humor, but raunchy and just tasteless, and just absolutely love it. I don't think that I could say much more about it, but I think my favorite scene probably in the movie, even though everything is my favorite scene in this movie, is got to be the David Koechner car lot scene where they get the free commercial. And pardon my phrases here, but he plants a bunch of dead hookers in the trunk during a live television commercial where he's showing off cars on a car lot. And David Koechner, you guys know he's in a million movies. He's in Krampus and one of the Final Destination movies. Just a really good comedian as well. But what happens is Norm interrupts him and says that, well, the trunk looks a little cramped there, my friend. He's like, and he opens it, and he had placed a bunch of prostitutes in the trunk. And there's a really great line by Boyd Banks, which I won't spoil. But if you've never seen this movie, go out and see it, especially if you grew up with SNL stuff and you love like Billy Madison or Happy Gilmore, those kind of silly humorous stuff or raunchy humor. And I also love that it feels like it shares some DNA with Used Cars, who also has Jack Warden in it. And it has that kind of raunchy humor in it. And I think Used Cars, which I saw for the first time recently, is brilliant too. And I think that if I had to put kind of a spiritual connection between two movies, I would put Used Cars and Dirty Work. Anyways, I wish this had a special feature. I wish it had the R cut. But yeah, just got to give a lot of love to Dirty Work. Perfect movie. Absolutely love it. And is there any bigger dick than Chris McDonald in a movie? I don't think so, man. He's also a bad guy in Happy Gilmore. Like I said, these movies share a lot of the same cast from all those movies like that. Yeah, and I haven't watched SNL in years. I haven't watched television in years. It's not that I'm like SNL is not as good as it used to be. I would have no idea. Like I haven't been watching it. But that '90s cast and that time when we had people like Norm and Chris Farley and it just was a special time. And then seeing like them act together in this is heartwarming too. Obviously, Chris Farley has passed away. It's really weird. Like when I saw Norm Macdonald die, I it's weird to get a connection between people you really don't know, but it rarely happens. It does happen. You have a fondness. They tie in directly with your childhood, and they don't have those feelings towards you. They don't know you. They probably don't even. They're maybe not even aware that they have those feelings. That people out there have those feelings or whatever. I'm sure they're aware, but you know what I mean. But when I saw that he passed away, I literally, genuinely was sad. And I remember being very young when Chris Farley being genuinely sad, or John Candy. When a funny person that connects to you on that level passes away, it's just nothing sadder than a comedian dying, I guess. So R.I.P. Norm, thanks for the laughs. The best. One of the best for me. And I mean, it means nothing coming from me, right? Just some guy that reviews movies. But I just felt weird not saying something. So anyways, love Norm Macdonald, love Dirty Work. You got to see it. And I originally held off on watching Dirty Work because I wanted to do something special for it. Rewatching it. I wanted to have one of my old friends come in and talk about Dirty Work with me. I still might do that down the line. But yeah. So anyways, that's Dirty Work. Okay, this next one here is from Severn Films, and this is Midnight, directed by John Russo, and it had been years since I've seen this one. I feel like this one I've actually seen I've seen years ago. I had a VHS, I believe, which had one of the coolest VHS covers, if I remember. Had a girl kind of struggling, a naked girl. It was drawn, and her head was caught between a clock, the hands on a clock, the fingers on a clock, and there were blades, and it ready to chop her head off. I always found that very kind of striking image on the VHS cover. I also had the DVD and whatnot. And I have a fondness of this kind of regional Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania kind of filmmaking. John Russo came from the George Romero world. He co-wrote Night of the Living Dead and made films and was there from the very beginning. So his movies have a certain look that he's involved with that reminds me of a lot of George Romero kind of Pittsburgh regional filmmaking, which I adore. I love how those movies look. And Midnight, I actually really like how this one looks too. It's made on a budget, and if I had to compare it to anything, I would compare it to more John Russo movies and maybe the Bill Heinzman movie Flesh Eater. It has it looks similar to like Majorettes or Flesh Eater, which are two more I really like. If nobody's seen Majorettes or Flesh Eater, I check them out, especially if you like Midnight. So Midnight is kind of like a backwoods slasher film, in the vein of a Texas Chainsaw or something along those lines, but it definitely adds that element of satanic panic. This was a book first that John Russo wrote himself, and it was made in '80, made on a budget, but they did actually shoot on film, which is nice, and I'm glad they did because something about those woods film like that in that regional low budget way that just look really great to me, and very very interesting. This is the worldwide uncut version, and I can't remember. It's been a long time since I watched Midnight, but I really don't remember that opening with them as kids. I don't know if that was in the original version or not. I feel like that might be one of the added-in elements, but I'm sure there's a couple more longer gore scenes as well. So what we have here is a runaway. This young girl, she's about 17 years old. She runs away when her stepfather tries to molest her when in a drunken kind of stupor. Her stepfather is none other than Lawrence Tierney. It's a classic Hollywood actor, but we probably know him best from stuff like Reservoir Dogs and a couple other horror movies. He was in The Prowler and he's in Silver Bullet. So he had a handful of horror movies. Anyways, he plays this kind of drunk police officer, stepfather, pervert. And he's really good in it, actually. He's a genuinely great actor anyways, but he's top-notch in this one. So he's probably the strongest performance in the film. Anyways, she kind of stumbles. She's going hitchhiking, and a couple young guys pick her up, and they plan on driving to Florida, convince her to go with them, and on the way, they're robbing and stealing to survive because they don't have money for groceries. What happens along the way is, of course, they actually stumble across this satanic cult, the satanic family members that are in the woods that are kind of sacrificing people in their weird, bent religious ways. There's a bunch of, there's 4 of them, I think, but they do have like this psycho feel, kind of, it's like obviously a Psycho, Texas Chainsaw Massacre riff and everything like that. The family dichotomy is more of a Psycho, a Texas Chainsaw, they're all inspired by the same subject matter, right? But we have 3 brothers and a sister, and I don't want to spoil too much because the reveal of them is actually pretty scary, and what they're dressed as is kind of I guess definitely fits in with the times and everything like that. The standout actor among them is John Aplus, who played Martin in Martin. He's a Romero regular. He's also in Day of the Dead. He has a small bit role in Dawn of the Dead. He's in a slew of movies. He's an excellent actor. He's really young in this, and he's actually really solid as well. I always thought he had a great demeanor and look about him, almost unthreatening, but still, when he plays these crazy characters, you buy it. He's very good. So yeah. So anyways, what happens is she's kind of kidnapped and she's trying to struggle and survive, while Lawrence Tierney, to try to make things right, aka not get in trouble from his wife, starts to go look for him. And that's kind of the story of Midnight. There's some gore effects here and there. A head is decapitated, some people are stabbed. It's not overly gratuitous, but the scenes that are there. They're pretty effective. I think Savini worked on the effects, and he's on the special features. I know he worked on the effects because he's on the fucking features and he talked about it, but so he basically mentions there's the big movies, like Maniac and Dawn of the Dead, and then there's the medium-sized movies you do, and then there's the ones you do kind of almost as a favor, like Midnight. So he was there very quickly. He's like, I'm not even sure if I'd seen the movie, but he kind of talks about it, and he says a lot of people bring it up at conventions here and there, and this is one of those movies that people will bring up occasionally. As well as the other features are on here is John Russo talks a lot about the movie, and I learned a lot about it. I enjoyed seeing that. Anytime like one of these old Romero kind of guys or comes from that area is going to talk about old movies like that, I'm definitely interested. Also, the producer, Sam Sherman, familiar name, producing low-budget pictures, talks as well. So yeah, anyways, Midnight is a solid little B-movie, kind of low-budget horror film that I've always had kind of a little bit of a soft spot for. I would put Majorettes and Flesh Eater above it because it's more my jam, especially Flesh Eater. I love that movie. But Majorettes has some really cool stuff too. Anyways, if you're interested in those movies and you like the regional Pittsburgh stuff, I recommend picking this one up. It looks great. They remastered this thing really well, and I don't know, when you clean up low budget movies, sometimes they look way better than expected, and this one is one of them. I want to say it did have a 5.1. It had a 5.1 surround sound, and that came through really well. Surprisingly, I thought it was really great, clean. Not like Severan's going to do a bad job, but sometimes older low budget movies, you never know how the sound quality was originally, so you never know what you're going to get, but I thought that 5.1 was really well done. And there's also a theme music here, Midnight, entitled Midnight, that gets stuck in your head. They play it 1,000 freaking times. Anyways, recommended movie. There is obviously some problems with the production, like some of the film got ruined, and Russo talks about that, and you can tell because there's a couple freeze frames that seem like they had no other choice. There's a really corny knockout scene, which is the best shot of it they had that wasn't exposed. The film was. So there's a couple of those kind of things where you're like, what? That was the most unbelievable hit ever on Lawrence Tierney. But anyways, check it out. I was not disappointed rewatching it. I had a lot of fun with it and enjoyed it. Okay, this next one here is A Day of Judgment, also by Severin Films. And this is a movie that I had heard about only briefly. Never seen anyone cover it. Never heard anybody that actually ever seen the damn thing. I just knew it by title. And it was one of those ones, just because a lot of times I'd go down the rabbit hole and just look up every single movie. I'd look up on an internet database. I'd be like 1981, right from the beginning or to the end, and I'd go down and be like, and see how far it is until I didn't know what something was, and then I'd read about it. That's kind of one thing I do sometimes, all right? I'm a weirdo. And A Day of Judgment was one of those movies that I saw, and I read about it. Like, seems kind of interesting, and I never, ever thought that this would get a Blu-ray release, let alone from somebody big like Severin Films. So, Day of Judgment, an interesting movie. You guys know me, I'm not really big on religious propaganda films, but as I look at this, I don't really consider this that, okay? Exorcism Emily Rose, I felt was like a true story, and they kind of try to bend that it's a real possession, even though somebody died. It just bothered me the way they presented that movie. It always was, it always did, and it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. When I watch something like A Day of Judgment, I don't feel that way about it. It is a movie that has a religious bend, but it's a morality tale, and it almost plays out like a lot of people will say this. You'll read it anywhere, the first few lines will say EC comic style just desserts religious tale. It's exactly what it is. It's almost like an anthology, because you have like 5 or 6 different storylines going on. It's about this small town. It's a period piece, I believe in the 20s, if I'm not mistaken, and you kind of follow about 5 or 6 different kind of, I guess you'll put them in sinners. They're sinners. They do awful things, but the kind of worst stuff, adulterers that have no remorse, and they're also will cover up, accidental murders and stuff like that. We have a awful, vain lady who cares more about her flowers than any life possible. We have a greedy banker, of course. So you have a lot of these kind of check marks and everything like that. But one day, death kind of rides into town. And as the preacher who can't afford to make his debts is leaving, he sees death ride in on a stagecoach and everything like that. So he knows what's going on. An actual director of this movie, there's a special feature on here. he was is it the director? I don't think there is an interview with him, but Stephen Thrower's on here, an atheist since interview with author of Nightmare USA, Stephen Thrower. But then there's a short little thing on here with interviews with filmmaker Worth Keeter and writer Tom McIntyre. And Worth Keeter actually mentions he was an atheist. So the producer was strongly religious. The writer and stuff is more of a religious type, but the director himself was an atheist. So I think that's probably why it doesn't come across so annoying to me, or it is preachy, but I love morality tales. Anybody knows me, I'm a huge fan of Tales from the Crypt and all that kind of stuff. So I enjoyed this one, and I know a lot of people will be like, well, it's just that kind of stuff. I can't believe you like this and not Exorcism of Emily Rose. Like I said, there's a major difference in those movies for me. But a lot of it feels very PG, very lighthearted, very kind of goofy, small townish. The sheriff kind of connects all the stories going around amongst people and everything like that, talking to everybody. And the sheriff is a likable guy. I did enjoy the sheriff, but the movie does get dark. It does get dark in a lot of places, and everything's obviously set up what's going to happen. A lot of the things are set up and pay off very quick after. And sometimes you're like, okay, is that what we're doing? But there is actually a couple genuine moments of fear or terror in this movie that surprised me, especially with the lady who's really vain about her flowers. And I love that the director says, well, the director did change some things about it. Originally, it was very PG, what happened to her punishment, but they made it really R-rated, and it just is one of these scenes that almost comes out of nowhere. You're like, oh wow, that's pretty extreme for this, and it's not like sexually explicit or anything. But I was just like, oh shit, that's what we're doing, and I absolutely loved that scene. It was really cool. I think the banker, he's actually a solid actor, a real piece of shit. I enjoyed everything about that guy. He was really good in this. And it just seemed genuine. And you know what's funny? It did remind me a bit of 1922. You know, the period piece movie from 2017, the Stephen King story with Thomas Jane. It had some DNA similar. But I'm surprised they made a period piece on a budget. And I thought they did a decent job. I enjoyed myself. And I think it's worth watching. It's definitely a curio. It's one of those movies that would be a curio. But it's an interesting one, and I enjoy it. I liked it. And I put it on kind of the same level as Midnight. All three of Severance ones they put out recently, including The Fourth Victim, I felt all were worth watching, and I came away from them all like, oh yeah, I remembered Midnight, but I was very happy I watched them, and they all had something a little bit different about them that I hadn't quite seen. But A Day of Judgment, which is kind of one of those ones that I'm just happy to see get a wider release, because I don't think anybody ever saw this damn thing. Okay, this next one from Severin Films is The Fourth Victim, directed by Eugenio Martin, the Spanish director who did the masterpiece Horror Express, one of Jeremy's favorite movies. I love Horror Express as well. He also did a couple others, Bad Man's River with Lee Van Cleef, and he was kind of a one of these directors like a Fulci who did a bunch of different genres, or a Martino, until eventually Fulci found his niche with the horror films or whatever, his popularity. But, Eugenio Martin did a bunch of different kinds of movies anyway. So The Fourth Victim is a giallo, and I never seen this one. It shares similarities to The Fourth Man, which anybody seen that one by Paul Verhoeven. So we have this kind of rich to do kind of guy. He's been married like three times, and one time, this most recent time on him, his wife is found drowned in the pool. And of course he buries her and everything, but they summon her to be dug up and do an autopsy because he had already lost two wives previous. He goes to trial, and you're never really sure if you think he did it or not. They never come out and say it in the beginning in the trial and everything like that, but eventually he gets off non-guilty. Fairly quickly after, Carol Baker starts to approach him swimming in his pool, trying to kind of work her way into his life. And you just, after a while, you realize she's not quite there. Carol Baker is in stuff like A Quiet Place to Kill, some other Lindsay movies, and some bigger movies as well. Kind of a cult item for sure. So they start this shaky relationship, and lo and behold, they decide to get married. Yes, who's a better person to marry who's had three times? He's almost like Henry, right? Henry the Fifth or whatever. Henry the Eighth. Henry the Eighth. Sorry about that. I had to sing the song by Hermit's Hermits. So yeah, he's like Henry the Eighth, right? I was just freaking all these wives dying. So or what? Bluebeard. Sorry about the wife killers. I'm getting off on a tangent here. So anyways, she decides to get married, but she has ulterior motives, and she also may not be who she's saying and she may not be there. So as the story unfolds, we start to learn more and more. And at first I was like, oh, is this going to be this kind of story? And they hint at a lot of things, and there's extra characters getting added in. And it's got that gothic feel because a lot of the houses are big, giant, beautiful mansions and almost like castle-like. But at first I was thinking, oh, it's going to be very generic and not satisfy or be obvious. And it's not. It actually has a couple twists and turns that I found vastly enjoyable and different. And by the end of it, I was like, that really worked for me. I really enjoyed that, and I did not predict all those things coming true or how it was going to unfold. Like, you predict the first or maybe one or two of the twists, but by the end, the last couple, you're like, oh shit, yeah, I did not see that coming. But it gets into some weird psychological places, and you're like, well, siblings and mental illness and, killing, kind of insurance fraud, all that kind of stuff. So it has that gothic feel too. I enjoyed this one. I thought it was pretty cool. And the cover is very, very lurid. You're like, oh, wow, that looks really kind of explicit and raunchy. And it's not as explicit or raunchy as one would think. But as far as the features are concerned, we have Eugenio Martin, our tour, interview with Eugenio Martin biographer, Carlos Aguilar. And he kind of talks a little bit about the career of him and covers his movies and mentions all the big stars he's worked with. Is quite a handful. So, I mean, the guy actually has some good credentials. And I've seen his name pop up here and there and seen a couple of his movies and been happy with them, especially Horror Express. And also there is a deleted scene which has a little bit of comedy and lets you in a little bit on some of the twist that is going to happen later. I'm glad it's cut because it makes the twist a little bit less of a surprise. Anyways, enjoyable movie, fun movie, not super long either. It doesn't wear out its welcome, but The Fourth Victim. Okay, the next one is from Arrow Video, and this is Threshold. This is a new film, and this one was the one that was shot completely on like cameras, camera phones, kind of shot on cameras. Oh, that's so good. Shot on phone cameras. Oh, no shit, Dave. It was shot on cameras. That's great. I'm a moron, but shot on phones. So what we have here is Threshold. So this is a strange one. And watching the special features would kind of help you have some more appreciation for this movie. You realize a lot of it's improv. They basically have a basic outline. The two main actors didn't even know the exact ending. They were changing things, all sorts of weird stuff. So it's a road movie. It's about a brother and sister. The sister is a recovering drug addict. The brother is going through his own personal kind of family turmoil. He shows up to help his sister. He's not happy about doing this. They have some kind of shaky past, and he kind of seems like a dickhead, even though she seems very mentally unstable. She's talking about having feelings and emotions from somebody else and that they're bonded or something like that, and they need to find out where this person is. So kind of driving across country to figure it out, and they're kind of having these longing moments and a friend, not longing moments, I mean like these lasting kind of interactions with each other, and more's coming to light, and they start to kind of bond as brother and sister once again while trying to figure out this mystery. At times it feels like a horror film. There's some kind of crazy Ouija board stuff that happens, and then there's some weird kind of dark, ominous presence. But a lot of times it's just them kind of bonding and talking and kind of exploring, and you learn more about them, and you realize the kind of stuff they had to overcome. At first, you think you know exactly what's going on with the brother and sister, but as it goes on, you learn more. And the ending I thought was fairly decent, and I thought this movie was the more you learn about it, you're like, oh wow, a lot of that was improv. It's a little bit more impressive than just a scripted movie would, and it looks a lot better than you would expect for a movie shot on a couple of phones. Like, I felt like it was a little darker, and Jeremy made a note when he saw some of this, and he was like, it looks a little bit older than it should be if this movie's a brand new film. And then realizing that they shot on phones and stuff with probably minimal light is probably a little harder to light some of the outside stuff or some of the shots on the street and on the road and everything like that. But they do manage to film a lot of beautiful locations, of course, going cross country, and I enjoyed myself with it. I actually liked it. The special features on here help a lot. You see a lot of the indie filmmaking stuff and all that kind of stuff, and it's a loaded disc, and they had a making of that was like a beefy one. It's like a pretty much a feature length one. But so they have audio commentary of directors Paul Robinson and Patrick Young, producer Lauren Bates, and lead actors Joey Million and Madison West, and then another audio commentary by Paul Robinson and Patrick R. Young, and the editor William Ford Conway. And that's important because the editor had to figure out the scenes because he got a lot of footage. They said Crossing the Threshold, a feature length documentary in the making of Threshold, elevating iPhone footage, color correction breakdown, Something from Nothing, indie genre director roundtable moderated by Scott Weinberg with directors Paul Robinson, Patrick Young, Brandon Epsey, Jason Byritt, Zach Donahue and Ellie Callahan. The Power of Indie Horror, acting from unconventional film roundtable discussion routed by Zena Dixon. And yeah, it's got a bunch of people involved with that. And the Sounds of Threshold original soundtrack. And then we have the original outline script, teasers and trailers, all sorts of stuff. So, not only is this a decent, solid indie horror film, more drama horror kind of deal, it's also, when you watch a lot of the features, it will help you to understand indie filmmaking and possibly help you make an indie movie. So that's pretty cool as well. So usually the contemporary stuff Arrow puts out is worth your time. They also put out that, I can't remember, jeez, I'm so bad. I'm getting so old. I'm looking at the wall hoping that I'll spot it really quick. But the Dead Center. I saw it. I cheated. The Dead Center, which I thought was pretty interesting, which is and then they also put out the one, I believe, with the whole entire family that filmed it from last year, which I thought was interesting as well. But anyways, Threshold, check it out if it sounds like it's up your alley. Okay, the next one is also a new film, and this is 10 Minutes to Midnight, starring Caroline Williams. And this is a relatively short movie. First and foremost, I want to say this one, it feels exactly like a Tales from the Crypt episode, and I mean that is no dismissive kind of comment. I love Tales from the Crypt, you guys know that. So, anyways, Caroline Williams is kind of like an aging, I don't even know what she does, talk radio, and she's kind of like on her last leg. It's kind of like the end of her kind of deal, and this is her final night. She shows up, and outside, right before during a storm, she gets bit by what she says is a bat, and right away things aren't right. It seems very weird. The guy at the security guard is off and asking a lot of weird questions. Seems very inquisitive about the said bat. Her boss, that her and him have a weird kind of shaky relationship. Obviously, something sexual had happened. There's a young woman there who seems like her replacement. There's like something going on between them. And then of course there is her audio guy who basically they seem to have a long relationship as well. So there's basically the main players in the film. And she starts to kind of hallucinate, and you're not sure if she's having a mental breakdown because this is kind of her last day on the job and she's been mistreated and she's kind of reliving a lot of her old experiences, or she's turning into a fucking vampire. So we kind of mix reality with fiction a little bit, and we see, when we kind of like go back in time, we see like her past but through the eyes of sort of a fever dream, and kind of all screwed up, and kind of like and kind of putting those emotions in to like reflect how she feels now. So that's kind of interesting. Caroline Williams is solid. It's kind of cool that she played kind of the disc jockey kind of deal in Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. I don't think the movie's necessarily perfectly acted by everybody. I don't think anybody's horrible, but I don't think anybody's, Academy Award winning level acting in here either, if that makes any sense. I think they're all kind of fun performances. Nothing insultingly bad, but nothing that blew me away. But I thought everybody was solid. So what happens is we kind of explore that, and we know it's going to go one or two ways, but it gets so weird at the end. I guess I didn't see it going that way. But we have a really crazy retirement party. Let's put it that way. We have Caroline Williams lashing out, some people getting killed. There's some crummy CGI blood. And don't get me wrong, I'm not like an anti-CGI guy, but I am hey, we're just going to spray some CGI blood on the window. Like, I'd rather not have the blood. I'm fine with doing a Quatermass 2 Dirty Dozen or something. Just shoot them and they fall down. I'll be okay. Or just a little bit blood. I know that the CGI splatter, probably a lot of people like it. I never heard anyone say they like it. And nobody brings it up when it's well done. All right. If it's very small or minimal, nobody will even notice it. And that's kind of the way it's supposed to be. But a lot of times you feel like it's just thrown in just because, I don't know, there was no gore at all. Nothing practical there in the first place. And I don't know if that's right or wrong. But anyways, by the time the thing ended, I enjoyed myself and it got real weird and trippy. It did have some practical gore effects that were cool. Anyways, I thought this one was all right. I think this one's worth checking out. Enjoyable little movie. 10 Minutes to Midnight. And I do like seeing Caroline Williams do a starring role. And this isn't one of those ones where you get like kind of a horror icon just to pop in the movie for 3.5 seconds and be like, hey, thanks for the paycheck, I'm out of here. It's not one of those. She stars in the movie. She has good dialogue. She has a genuine performance, that kind of thing. So yeah. Behind the scenes, basically there's a behind the scenes and audio commentary and interviews and intros and a teaser trailer as far as the features go. But that's 10 Minutes to Midnight. Check it out if it sounds like it's up your alley. All right, here we go. This is a new movie from 2021. It's divided the audience. People love it. People hate it. It's Malignant by James Wan. So you guys know me. And you know that I've covered The Conjuring 1 and 2 on here. I thought The Conjuring 1 is not my thing. It's not for me. Enjoyed The Conjuring 2 a little bit more. I love Death Sentence by James Wan. I think it's great. I love it. I like Dead Silence is perfectly fine. Saw is perfectly fine. Those two ones I don't absolutely adore, but I do love Death Sentence. I have never watched the Insidious movies. It's just something about James Wan. I know he's a very capable, very popular director, and I know he's good. I would never tell anybody he's not good, but he typically goes for movies that don't interest me that much. So, when I saw Malignant on HBO Max, I didn't go to the theater. I'm sorry, guys. I know, burn me at the stake or whatever. I was like, okay, I'm gonna pop it in. I don't know anything about it, so that's the best way I suggest going to see it. So, before this is spoiled or anything like that, I'll just say that I give it a recommend. All right, I really like this movie. Okay, so check it out, go watch it, and that's just based off that. If you're interested, in what the hell I think, I loved it. So watch it. But this will have. I'll let you guys know when I'm going to get a little bit more spoilery as I go on. But so right when this opened up, I always thought that James Wan's cinematography was pretty solid. I always thought it was great. The lighting, the cinematography, the atmosphere. I always thought he was really good at that kind of stuff. The DP work, it's really top notch. And you know, the way the fog and atmosphere and lighting, it's always really well done. Production design. That's kind of like his strongest points for me in a lot of his movies. So it opens up and there's a lot of like fog pouring out of this big house, and I was like, all right, this looks really cool. This is kind of catching my attention. And we do this wonderful shot where we have the cinematography work follow the actors through all these rooms, and I know that doesn't sound too elaborate to anybody that's seen like Dario Argento Tenebrae or something like that, but it reminded me of that because the way they do the camera work, I was like, I never typically had seen anything exactly like that. So the way it's done, I was really happy with it. And like I said, the color palette looked really good. Looked really good. A lot of people are saying it looks like an Italian movie or something like that. And I don't think I'd disagree with that 100% at all. I don't think I would disagree with that. But the plot starts, the characters are talking, and we have this typical, I'm your drunk husband, wife beater guy, like, I hit you when I'm drunk, but I'll never do it again, baby. I'm like, what is this one-dimensional character bullshit? And it's just like overly dramatic, like Lifetime original stuff. And I'm like, here we go again. Just stuff that I'm just not going to enjoy that other people won't mind. Because you guys know me. If a movie takes itself 100% serious and there's any plot holes, I don't really care for it. But it took me about 25 to 30 minutes to realize that this movie was completely intentionally doing it in a campy way. I don't know if campy is the definition. They don't know they're doing it. But anyways, it comes across campy. I don't know how to break that down or whatever. But it was intentional. It wasn't like, but it also wasn't, hey, this movie sucks, let's laugh at it, Sharknado. It was a certain kind of throwback to movies I like. And it took me a while to register what the hell it was. So after a while, the movie gets completely bonkers. It keeps changing what it is in a lot of ways, but it stays on course, and it just becomes action set piece after set piece at certain times, gory kills, just weird nutso kind of shit. And I can't talk about this movie anymore without spoiling it. So at a certain point, I was like 30 minutes in, maybe less, and I was like, so this is, the dark half, right? This is the dark half. Are we doing the dark half by George Romero? I'm okay with that if we're doing that, because the character's having these kind of, weird kind of out-of-body experiences where she's witnessing these murders of these doctors, but then it ties in that the doctors had some relationship with her, and I'm like, oh, we're doing Basket Case, which I love Basket Case by Frank Henenlotter. I really said this right away. I was like, we're doing dark half, we're doing Basket Case, and then it starts to get really weird, and you start to kind of reveal the curtain a little bit, and we see her past, and it's like the doctors start to talk, and there's a detective looking into the story, so we have that element, and we're like, oh, we're doing Daniel isn't real. And I'm like, oh, we're doing sisters? And we start getting real fucking weird, and there's a reveal in this movie where we see some of the medical experiment going on, where I literally laughed out loud in pleasure. And I couldn't believe this big budgeted James Wan movie was going to go full Frank Henenlotter on me. I was so fucking happy to see James Wan kind of embrace that weirdo kind of cinema. He always plays it safe for me. I'm sorry. He plays it safe. He plays you guys like The Exorcist. You guys like the Amityville Horror. I know that this is, come on in, guys. This is going to be those movies for the entire family. It's very safe. It's very popcorny. But Malignant is not. Malignant is going to divide the audience. Some people are going to say this is absolutely freaking dumb, and it's not. It's so stupid and over the top that I don't love it. I can't watch it. It's just too stupid. But this movie is intentionally knows it's that. It's not like, hey, this is stone cold serious. We have a serious message here, and we're telling you, and it's all messed up and dumb. Like it's not that kind of dumb. it's very aware of how ridiculous it is. But the reveal is essentially that this character, she's the murder she's been witnessing, she's actually witnessing herself, and she has she has spoilers, guys. She has what you guys would say a conjoined twin that was originally attached to her at a young age named Gabrielle that is still in her head and still talks to her. And during an abusive moment with her ex-husband, or her husband who's been murdered by her or by Gabrielle as you put it, or Gabe, it's been kind of reawoken. It's been feeding on her miscarriages, and now it has full strength to come out. And it was this creature that was on her back. Not exactly basket case or Belial, but close enough. So it's this gross creature reveal, and I was like, I love it. They ended up cutting it up and trying to shove as much back into her as possible. So what happens is these triggers happen, and the creature comes out of her back. She walks backwards, and it's a gnarly monster and kills the doctors. Eventually, it's after more people. There's a giant. My friend Derek was like, "That's Maniac Cop 2. That's Maniac Cop 2." They essentially do a Maniac Cop 2 where we legitimately see the backwards watch twin monster thing go through about 30 cops. And it also reminds me of Terminator, of course. Kills like 30 cops. And like almost like a Marvel style way, but also it's gory. I love this damn thing. There's also the cops. One of them is kind of a wisecracking. It makes me laugh. He had a couple lines that made me laugh out loud. I can't remember exactly what they were. And I know a lot of people aren't going to be into it. It's definitely a throwback to those crazy kind of conjoined twins, mental illness, psychological weird things. There's two of them. Is there two of them? What's happening? But it gets so over the top. It hits that Henenlotter kind of category, which I couldn't believe. And it literally is like Dark Half and Basket Case and all that kind of stuff. It's nothing new, but it becomes different and new because it's such a big budgeted, well shot movie that incorporates a bunch of different things that I love. So I was very into it. I was very happy with it. The ending is a little iffy to me, but it's not going to stop me from absolutely adoring the movie. Loved the prison scene as well. All these characters in the prison are just like straight up generic. Like, hey, it's like the 80s or 90s. Everybody's just a stereotypical kind of over the top character type. But anyways, I love Malignant. By far my favorite James Wan movie, up there with Death Sentence. I feel like when he steers to more exploitation, over the top weirdness, I'm in. Maybe I need to check out Insidious. I've never seen that one. But when we plays it safe, I'm not into it. Not for me. You know, even if it's well made, playing it safe, stuff I've seen 100 times, sometimes I'm into it, like with zombie movies, because I love zombie movies. But ghost stories, you got to get weird, you got to get different. If you're going to steer the course, I'm not into it. That's why I preferred Conjuring 2 over 1, because it was a little bit different, a little bit goofier. We got Patrick Wilson playing Elvis songs. Number 1 is by the numbers, seen it 100 times, Kids Bop version of Amityville and Exorcist, not for me. But this one, it's for me. And if you guys want to be like, well, how can you not like The Conjuring and like something stupid like Malignant? I'm just that kind of stupid guy, I guess, okay? A lot of fun, beautiful colors, beautiful cinematography, crazy action, stupid reveals that are wonderfully brilliant at the same time. Malignant for the win. I'd be very shocked if this did not make my top 10 of 2021. Okay, this next one needs no introduction. And if you haven't seen this, just go watch it immediately. This is John Carpenter's The Thing in 4K. I've bought this movie so many frickin' times. I actually bought the Arrow edition, the Scream Factory edition, never even opened them. Finally, and it's a movie I adore. So when it hit 4K, I was like, well, I gotta have that bad boy. Yeah. This is one of the 5 or 6 movies that if someone told me that's the greatest horror film ever made. Not my personal favorite, but it's in my top 5, 6 favorite horror films ever made, favorite movies ever made. Somebody told me that's the greatest horror film ever made, I would be not going to argue with you there. And there's only a handful of movies I would say not going to argue with you there. That includes Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Alien, Night of the Living Dead, stuff like that. Just Jaws, absolute classics. I think The Thing is brilliant. I absolutely love The Thing. Obviously, we know the story about what happened with The Thing. It wasn't a big hit in 82. I'm sure there were some people that absolutely loved it. But this one was one that I was a very young age, would just see here and there on the Sci-Fi Channel. Eventually was interested enough to rent it at a very young age and enjoyed it. And over time, it just is a movie that I always liked. And as you get older, you're like, oh, no, that's a great movie. Even as it grows and grows and grows as you get older. Every year, The Thing got better and better. Until to the point when you're like, 16, 17, you're like, well, this is one of the best movies ever made, right? Am I right? All right, it's got to be. So, ensemble cast, right? This is one of these things that is going to be the question of the week, the best ensemble cast. Um, and I was talking about True Romance last week, which is one of them. Dirty Dozen, one of my all-time favorite movies. But The Thing is no slouch either. We have big stars like Kurt Russell and Wilford Brimley. And then we pick out the rest of the 10 cast members with character actors. And what am I going to say? Character actors are usually the strongest actors. These guys are wonderful. And I'm not going to remember all these character actors' names. So they're these guys that you recognize right away, like T.K. Carter and Keith David, which is one of my favorite actors of all time, Donald Moffat, Charles Holohan. Who else is in here? Thomas Waite, or is it White? He's in the Warriors and Oz. He was in Oz. And then some other familiar faces. Richard Dysart, Richard Masur. There's just so many good actors in this freaking movie. The guy who plays Bennings is in a couple of the Palma movies. So, anyways, everybody knows the story of The Thing. We have this kind of this expedition group, this kind of group of scientists out in Antarctica, and these Norwegians are chasing this dog in a helicopter, shooting at it, this kind of husky dog. The dog makes it to their camp, and obviously they have to kill the Norwegians because they're kind of going crazy, acting really sporadic and everything. And what happens is this dog ends up in the camp, and before long, they decide to go check out what happened in the Norwegian camp, and they realize that there was something in the they found something in the ice. This is based off John Carpenter made this after Who Goes There, the story, and Howard Hawks' The Thing from '51, The Thing from Another World. He produced it, kind of ghost directed it. But Who Goes There, the story, and The Thing from Another World. He took his own idea about it, and you can see like some of his inspirations in here, like that story, of course, and like obviously and Lovecraftian stuff, but the Quatermass experiment films as well. And I still need to read the original story, Who Goes There, and see The Thing from Another World, which is one of my biggest blind spots ever, which is terrible, right? I have not seen it, but I've seen the prequel, and I've seen the Quatermass movies and stuff like that, but I can see that DNA connection between the Quatermass movies, especially how I perceive The Thing works, how it works and everything, and it just scares the shit out of me. So anyways, they go up there and they dig out the ice, and what they find is some of their medical records and all sorts of weird things. Fairly quickly, they realize that the monster, the nasty thing that they found, actually still has some cellular life in it, and it attacks one of the members of the team. And the scientists, Blair and Fuchs and some other ones, they realize that something is terribly wrong here. And the thing is absorbing people, and they don't know how it works exactly, but they're in danger, and any member of the team could be infected. So it goes to this whole story where who to trust, who's the thing, who's not the thing. I love isolated paranoia. See my favorite movies of all time, including Day of the Dead and Night of the Living Dead, this isolated paranoia. And I love that Day of the Dead and The Thing share a lot of similarities. We have 12 guys isolated trying to survive. Everybody's pointing their guns at each other. But there's just so many wonderful lines in here. I mean, come on. I know people would bring up the tied to this fucking couch, Donald Moffat, which is probably one of the best lines of all time. You gotta be fucking kidding me, the Palmer line. But really, one of the things about The Thing that if you talk about it and you don't bring it up, you just weren't watching the same movie, is the wonderful special effects by Rob Bottin. The effects in this movie are probably unmatched. They were like the pinnacle of the 80s, and I'm not so sure they ever got better. They are wonderful. And the way the thing works is absolutely terrifying. When we see the dog in the kennel kind of absorbing the dogs and becoming this giant mass and these weird kind of growths coming off of it before they burn it. The way that scene's also shot is super suspenseful and just terrifying. In fact, the whole movie is shot wonderfully perfect. I have no complaints about this movie. Like I said, all the characters are standouts to me. I recognize all of them. I could tell you all their names. And that rarely happens in a lot of movies. I can do that with a handful of movies, tell you every detail about it. But one thing I also love about The Thing is thinking about how it actually works and just being terrified of it. how it absorbs and how its cellular structure works and how it multiplies and how it branches off and when did somebody get infected and how they got infected and everything like that. It just blows my mind. And I did the same thing with the Quatermass experiment. I thought, how the hell? And the possibility of this thing is just terrifying. It's terrifying and it's just so weird. Mac Reedy in here, Kurt Russell is. I think everybody my age thinks Kurt Russell is their John Wayne, right? And I know a lot of people have a lot of hate towards John Wayne, but John Wayne is the movie star he is for a reason. I mean, he was very popular. He had a certain screen presence and charisma, and John Carpenter grew up watching a lot of John Wayne John Ford, Howard Hawks movies with John Wayne, and I would tell you, I'm sure that John Carpenter loves John Wayne. And to me, Kurt Russell is our generation's John Wayne, from stuff like Tombstone to The Thing, and he has a certain presence about him. And although John Wayne steered clear to sci-fi, he was more of a Western, kind of actor, of course, and war guy. But still, I feel like Kurt Russell has that kind of edge to him a little bit, if that makes any sense, especially when he does the Western movies. But I just don't know. He's endlessly likable, much more versatile actor than John Wayne. But no hate on John Wayne. I love movie stars just as much as the next guy. But Mac Reedy, man, Kurt Russell in this movie, he's just got it. He's just got that special likability about him and toughness and everything. And I got to really give it out for Keith David too. Keith David is just somebody that like that kind of intensity about him in this movie. I absolutely love. Like I could literally watch all these guys in this movie without the thing showing up and still love it. The way they use editing and fade to black is my favorite use of fading to black of all time. Like they'll say, "What do you think, Blair?" And Wilford Brimley will just look at the camera and no answer. It just kind of fades to black. At times you'll hear the Ennio Morricone score kind of come in, that ominous score, and you're just like, "Oh shit!" It's so perfect. It's such a perfectly put together film. And here's another thing that drives me crazy about it. At the very end, I know a lot of theories and people that were involved with the movie are like, well, you can tell Keith David at the end of the movie was the thing because he doesn't have the sparkle in his eye. It's like the original intent for me, the way I see it is, you're never supposed to know if Keith David is the thing. And I personally think that they sat there and froze to death because that is the way John Carpenter would end a movie. Well, it's happy, but it's not. It is what it is. They're just going to freeze to death. Maybe we shouldn't get out of here. I just feel that they're going to sit there and die. Maybe the thing gets off. Maybe Keith David is the thing. I don't think so. Nope, you're never supposed to know. So when somebody says, he is without a doubt the thing, it's like, how? You're not supposed to know because a DP said that there was supposed to be a sparkle in his eye, even though he's set up in a certain way that there wouldn't be a sparkle in his eye, even though you do see a sparkle in his eye at one point during that scene, very briefly. It's just whatever, man. It's just fan theory. You're never supposed to know. And I like to think he's not, but I'm not going to tell you he's not. The beauty of it is you don't know. You're not supposed to know. But the video game said the video game's not fucking canon, okay? We start going off all the crappy sequels on movies and everything. It's a video game sequel. Get the fuck out of here. But I know people are like, well, John Carpenter, that's how he'd do it if he made a sequel. You have to do it that way. What are you going to do? Is just have them walk to civilization and then tell people not to go back there? Or do an Aliens deal where she goes back there when she shouldn't be going back there. Anyways, you're just not really supposed to know. But super memorable gore effects, special effects. I wouldn't even call them gore effects. These are just special effects because the way the thing comes together and everything like that. It's just perfect. What can I really say about this movie that hasn't been said already? I think it's just a brilliant movie. I think that it's scary as shit. I think that it's horrifying. I think that obviously Carpenter brings up that in the making of here that it kind of is a big, metaphor for how the world is. Nobody knows what countries to trust. Nobody trusts anybody anymore. And I remember during COVID-19 and during our whole, political divisiveness that we're in and probably always have been in, but it gets worse due to social media and all those kind of things. People quoting Kurt Russell says, I don't know who to trust anymore. Nobody trusts anybody anymore. And we're all very tired. And it's just like, yes. And I think like the greatest, one of the greatest sci-fi movies, if not top 3, is the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Just that whole idea, nobody knows how to trust anybody anymore. We're very tired. It's just, and I feel like this has DNA to the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers as well. But it goes back to the thing from 51. Invasion was 56. So whatever, you guys know. But anyways, sci-fi masterpiece. As far as the picture quality and the sound and everything sounded great, looked great. Was really happy to see this bad boy in 4K. Absolutely adore this movie. It's perfect. And on the features, just doesn't have all the beefy features that the Arrow edition has or the Scream Factory edition has. I have those as well. But as far as the features on this are John Carpenter's The Thing, Terror Takes Shape, which is a fairly long. I mean, it's an hour. It's over an hour, but it has interviews with some of the big names in the movie, some of the special effects guys like Rob Bottin, and of course John Carpenter's on here. Selected cast, including the guy who played Fuchs, Charles Hallahan's on here, some other people. Love seeing Charles Hallahan on here, and he has some interesting kind of how he talks about playing Norris, who actually is one of the things at a point. He's infected. And he says, well, I feel like subconsciously he never knew he was. He knew subconsciously that he was a thing, but as he was alive, he didn't know he was a thing. So when they ask him, are you up to being the leader, Norris? He's like, I don't know. I'm not up for it, fellas. And I love the idea that, so the thing perfectly assimilates you, right? It makes a perfect copy of you. And Keith David brings up too, he's like, if I was a perfect copy, how would you know? You wouldn't know. So it did it duplicated or whatever, absorbed Charles Hallahan, but it also absorbed his bad heart, right? And I love the idea when the thing is attacked is when it kind of separates. And that brings to that brilliant scene with the defibrillator and Doc Copper and Norris goes for the second defibrillator hit, and the stomach opens up and takes poor Doc Copper's arms off. That's an actor in Prophecy. So all these guys are huge character actors. So anyways, I love seeing that. There's some outtakes, and there's a feature commentary by director John Carpenter and Kurt Russell. Kurt Russell was Carpenter's Lucky Charm. Used him in Escape from New York, The Thing, the Elvis Presley movie, Escape from L.A. Keith David pops up in, They Live. And who else pops up? He has these big casts a lot of times, and I would say like a cast kind of like Prince of Darkness has a little bit of similarity, kind of like Peter Jason and stuff like that. Lawrence Ferguson, but I don't think he ever had a better cast. Maybe Escape from New York could be matched for sure. I mean, you got some huge names in that one that I adore, character actors and kind of old movie stars that I love. But I don't think Escape from New York ever touches the brilliance of The Thing as far as a film is concerned. Anyways, just perfect. I mean, Carpenter, Ennio Morricone, Kurt Russell, Keith David, Wilford fucking Brimley. Get out of here, man. Just love this movie. My one complaint is this, believe it or not. The blood test. I really don't like the idea of them cutting everybody open with the same scalpel. Right? After they're cut open, they use the same scalpel. I know Windows wipes it off on his pants and everything like that after they use it the first time. But you're like, you should really be using different scalpels to cut everybody open, especially if this thing is contagious. I don't know exactly how it works. Some people believe that the thing needs time with you, how it absorbed Bennings. It was kind of sucking him up. The two-headed kind of creature thing sucked up Bennings, and how it obviously had time with Blair, or the dog had time with whoever it got at the time, Norris or Palmer. Not 100% sure on that. It's got to have some time to absorb you. Now, is it a blood contagion? Because we see that when Palmer's head splits open and it grabs Windows, it's starting to eat him or absorb him. And he's starting to turn as well because he was completely engulfed. So I don't know how easy it is to spread the thing. If just blood to blood contact, or it needs to kind of sort of absorb your cells. Never really know. But still don't like the fucking idea in 1982 of them using the same fucking scalpel to cut people's fingers open to do the blood test. So anyways, The Thing, the best. Anybody tells me different, I don't want to hear about it. So anybody that's always like, am I the only one that doesn't like The Thing or Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or change my mind, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. I don't want to see it. I don't care. I keep those opinions to myself because I realize I'm wrong. If everybody loves a movie and I'm not asked directly about said movie, I'm going to keep my fucking mouth shut because I'm in the wrong. And it's not like I'm scared to share my opinion. It's just that after a certain point, history is spoken, and you're on the wrong side, buddy. Texas Chainsaw and The Thing, classics.
Mayday. Anyone hear me? Oh. This is U.S. Station 31. You read me? Found something in the ice. We need some help down here. Can anybody hear me? We found something. We found something. We found something.
12 men have just discovered something. For 100,000 years, it was buried in the snow and ice. Now it has found a place to live. Inside. Where no one can see it, or hear it, or feel it.
I know I'm human. Some of you are still human. This thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation. It'll fight if it has to, but it's vulnerable out in the open. If it takes us over, then it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it. And then it's won.
You guys gonna listen to Gary? He can beat one of those things!
Okay, we're going to do the Patreon pick, and this was Dan the Cameraman picked. Clint Eastwood movie I've never seen. I decided to pick the 1984 kind of, I guess, throwback film noir, modern day film noir. What do they call those? There's a name for the film noir kind of modern ones. But Tightrope, starring Clint fucking Eastwood. Not directed by Clint Eastwood. He said it could be directed or star or both. Also has, Dan Hahea, and I can't think of this actress's name, but she's the same actress in Dead Ringers, the David Cronenberg movie from '86. So Tightrope. This is a real sleazy movie for Eastwood. And I see a lot of the reviews. People are like, horny Eastwood is the best Eastwood. So Eastwood's plays this 50s, mid 50s, early 60s police detective who gets involved with this kind of strange case involving someone who is killing prostitutes. Here's the crazy thing about it is Clint Eastwood is also frequenting these prostitutes, so the killer is focusing on the prostitutes that Clint Eastwood is frequenting. He's kind of keeping it on the down low that he's doing this. The whole movie takes place in New Orleans, which is a great backdrop for a crime film or a detective story. So we have Eastwood kind of going into these kind of weird sex clubs and brothels and everything like that, and having these interactions with people. And when you think kind of crazy sexual escapades, I don't think Clint Eastwood. I know he was considered very attractive, but he also has that rough exterior, or sometimes he has kind of that, it almost seems kind of repressed exterior and Unforgiven before he kind of goes into the whole, William Money crazy kind of guy thing later on, when he kind of goes back to his old self, or maybe his true self. It depends how you look at it. But seeing Eastwood in this movie is just great. I'm a big Clint Eastwood fan. I mean, as far as acting and everything is concerned, and directing, I think he's great. I think he's one of the best. So yeah, in this one, he's really good, and it's really different. And he also is kind of smart in his way. I know a lot of people would say Burt Reynolds did this too. He kind of protected himself with the audience. In White Lightning, he does certain things that will win people over and kind of avoids doing other things that will kind of make him despicable. So Eastwood is definitely playing that line here. He's doing some stuff with the sexual nature and a little bit, risque for Eastwood. But at the same time, in the very opening of the movie, him and his daughters are playing. He's a single father playing football in the street, and this mutt dog, or this homeless dog, this stray dog, comes up, and his daughter's like, "Can we keep him?" And he's like, "Well, I think we take him to the pound." And they're like, "What happens to if he doesn't get adopted at the pound?" And he looks up and he's like, and then you go in his house and he has 4 stray dogs. He's different kinds of dogs that he has obviously adopted over the years. So I thought that was kind of a nice touch in there. The movie is a little bit long in the tooth, but no complaints. When he's kind of finding the killer and getting closer to it and the murders and everything like that, it feels really kind of dark, and he starts to focus on his family. There's some dark stuff. Plays more like a horror movie than a lot of the movies you would see that are actually advertised as horror films. A lot of dark stuff. I feel like it kind of would be a nice little B picture with Cruising. If Cruising's the A picture, I know it's weird to have Clint Eastwood as a B picture, but anyways, Cruising's the better film, so I put Cruising and Tightrope. Not by that much. I love Cruising more. Maybe it's not the better film. I just like it more. But Tightrope and Cruising, I think, would make a cool double feature. Kind of that seedy kind of detective work going undercover. No, not necessarily undercover, but you see Eastwood having a lot of sex with prostitutes and everything like that, and the killer's starting to use kind of stuff that puts him closer to the case. This is one I kind of wanted to pick because on the movies that made me. Josh Olson brings this movie up a lot. Obviously, a big Clint Eastwood fan. I listened to that podcast with Joe Dante and Josh Olson, and he brings up this movie a handful of times, and he brings up the idea how kind of progressive in a weird kind of way Clint Eastwood was. There's this scene where the villain has actually hired a gay prostitute for him, and the prostitute's ready to go, let's do it, and everything like that. And Eastwood's like, I'm not interested, and he's like, how do you know if you haven't tried it? And he's like, who says I haven't? And it's just like, and he always thought that was really kind of crazy that Clint Eastwood would do that and put himself in there in 1984. But anyways, I've always enjoyed Eastwood. He's always kind of done stuff that not everybody would typically do, especially in Unforgiven. He puts himself in that position where he shows like real ways somebody would react to what they've done. And I thought that was, I mean, it's a great film. But Tightrope, dark and seedy, and it's got this kind of underbelly, which I really like seeing. Really good stuff. And the villain, the end scene's really cool too. Reminded me a little bit of Town That Dreaded Sundown with the train stuff going on, or the awful Dario Argento's what's up with the card player? It doesn't remind me anything of the card player. Let's keep Town Dreaded Sundown, all right? But yeah, this is a good one. Like Eastwood in it. Like the love interest is really good too. Dan Hyaya is okay. He's not bad, but he's his typical partner in these movies. Anyway, it's just a good film. Lots of sleazy stuff going on. Lots of good nudity and sex stuff. So anyways, check it out, Tightrope. Okay, we're going to go into the weekly Western.
Let's go. Why not?
Fill your hand, you son of a bitch!
Say when.
Feel I'm knocking up on heaven's door. Knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door.
Hey, Kitty, you bastard! It's you and I!
I don't deserve this.
And the weekly Western is a favorite of mine that I grew up with. And I brought up Sam Raimi before when I talked about the Evil Dead movies, but I mean, there's a lot of people that love Evil Dead. Like I said, there's two fans of Evil Dead. There's people who love Evil Dead. There's people who love Sam Raimi. I'm a Sam Raimi kind of guy, so I love that innovative stuff. This is The Quick and the Dead. Yeah, some people call this the blood sport of Westerns, right? Because we have this tournament. This cast in here is amazing. It also has some big stars in here, but it also is character actor heaven. So the big stars in here, of course, are Sharon Stone, Gene Hackman, and two more that weren't necessarily huge at the time, but they were on their way, and Russell Crowe and Leonardo DiCaprio, who are both fantastic in it as well. So then we also have some character actors that are great. Robert Blossoms, Pat Hingle, Kevin Conway, Mark Boone? I can't never think of his name. He's in a bunch of stuff. He's in Seven, and he was in that biker show that people loved. Who else pops up in here? Tobin Bell, Keith David again, Lance fucking Hendrickson. He's hilarious in this movie. Sev Thorson. It's just got a wonderful Gary Sinise. It's got a really great cast. I can't speak how much I love this cast. All right, so we have here is, and I talked about The Crow this week too, and The Crow does share some DNA only in the fact that we have flashbacks to a revenge story kind of going in here. So what we have here is Sharon Stone shows up to this town, and she's obviously a haunted person. She knows that there's going to be this big gun tournament. She shows up there to do one thing, and that's take out Gene Hackman, who runs this town, who's an evil son of a bitch criminal that has a past. He brings in Russell Crowe, who used to ride with him. He's a preacher now. He obviously regrets his past life. He's going to make him partake in this tournament, and Leonardo DiCaprio is Gene Hackman's son. So we have all these different players showing up for this kind of big tournament and everything like that to make what is it, equivalent $120,000 in Western times, which is quite a lot of money. So we have that kind of really fun shooting style of Sam Raimi, especially in the shootouts. We have like bullets going through heads and flip backs and everything. That kind of over the top funness that he does a lot, which I absolutely love. But then we also have a wonderful score by Alan Silvestri, who is one of the big kind of guys who does score, and it's definitely feels like would I call it a throwback to like spaghetti westerns. The whole movie in its entirety is kind of a throwback a lot of ways to a spaghetti western, and more so than a traditional western, because we have like stuff that is, I mean, all westerns are kind of over the top, but more over the top, like in a lot of spaghetti westerns, you watch people doing backflips and then shooting and tables and stuff. So we have a lot of that stuff going on too. But like I feel like it's very Raimi at the same time in the editing, especially when we go through the montage of like the shootouts and everything throughout. But anyways, there's just a lot of brilliant fun lines in here. Gene Hackman's got one of my favorites. If you live to see the dawn, it's because I allow it. I love his little speech he gives the town when he's really upset at them. But it is a typical story. Unlikely kind of hero, doesn't want to do anything to save the town, in it for their own selfish reasons, but kind of ends up kind of helping the town in the same kind of way. Anyways, so I mean, like that's kind of like Magnificent Seven has a little bit of that too. But I really like this movie. Like if you guys haven't noticed yet, and it's the cast too. The cast is brilliant. You need good cast in this kind of movie. Leonardo DiCaprio is wonderful. Like you watch him in this, you're like, oh, that guy's gonna be a star. I know he was in stuff before. I imagine Basketball Diaries is way before this. I would say this Boy's Life has to be before this too. And we all know Critters 3 is definitely before this. But you just watch him, and he's got so many good speeches, and he's really great in it. And what happens to his character? Like if you were to make a pulpy kind of fun movie like this nowadays, there's no way they would allow what happens to him. That's why I feel like even movies that are fun, like back in the day, they still had stakes. And like I'll keep saying this over and over again, we need stakes in our movies, like, and eggs. But no, I mean, we need stakes in the movies to make them exciting. Like action movies nowadays are like, everything's gonna be okay, everything's fine, and it's just like, fucking do something, guys. Make somebody at least regret their decisions or something, or some heartfelt moments. It's just there's never stakes for me anymore in a lot of the action movies, or everything's a blur. Like I don't know who any of these people are getting killed, and I just don't give a shit. This one, like I know who all the characters are. They're well established, even if they are, characters from Punch Out or something like that. Like that's what it's kind of like, right? It's like we have Spotted Horse cannot be killed by bullet. That kind of fun stuff going on. It's just a lot of fun. It is just a throwback to westerns and kind of the style of like traditional and spaghetti westerns. It's Sam Raimi doing a western. It's everything you would want. And I know it's going to sound crazy, but my favorite Sam Raimi movies are like Darkman and Quick and the Dead. It's just that absolute kind of pulpy fun stuff that I adore. With all these kind of weird characters in them and stuff. So I love this movie. I love the flashback. I think it works a lot better than something like The Crow, how it's put in and how she like stuff triggers her to remember. I think Sharon Stone's solid in it, but I really enjoy the damn thing. I like how they do the clock. The clock does the tick. That's how they determine who shoots and everything. Anyways, just a real blast. Lance Henriksen is really funny in it. He's absolutely hilarious. He's like this Ace Hanlon, I think is his name in it. And he's this guy, these typical kind of guys that just bullshit their way through everything. I feel like Richard Harris is kind of a similar character on Unforgiven, but this movie's so much more over the top. But Ace always has these cards and everything. And anyways, I love this damn thing. And Keith David, again, is wonderful. He's got a great line in here. So we shoot. Pat Hingle's got that wonderful voice, and he says something about them, like he's always the guys announcing the fights. And we shoot to the last man standing, and Gene Hackman says, "Till they're dead." And everybody's like looking around, and he's about to duel Keith David, and he's like, "Is there any problem with that?" And Keith David says, "I was planning on killing you anyway." It's just one of my favorite lines in the movie. Anyways, just a great film. Love it. Highly recommended. Great stuff. Okay, so now we're going to hop into the 1970 movies.
Though sometimes beaten back, he came again and again against the enemy, till at the end he came alone from the bloody field, for he alone could triumph. This was a Dracula indeed.
1970, President Nixon ordered American troops into Cambodia. He called it an incursion, not an invasion, and it lasted for 2 months. The purpose was to destroy enemy bases and supply lines. At times, that mission was extremely dangerous.
Marcus Welby, MD, and the Dick Cavett Show will not be seen tonight, so that we may bring you live color coverage of the 42nd Annual Awards of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences.
The Jimi Hendrix experience is over. The acid rock musician died today in a London hospital, apparently from an overdose of drugs.
Headquarters in Washington, I'm Howard K. Smith.
I'm Harry Reisner in New York. These are tonight's headlines. Rail service across the nation is crippled by the continuing strike of the Railway Clerks Union. President Nixon meets with newsmen in his first nationally televised news conference since late July. Defense counsel says that Lieutenant Calley had orders from higher up to kill every living thing, and he lied. And Secretary of State Rogers pledges that American troops will not be sent back into Cambodia. Howard?
Reports tonight on the rail strike from Gregory.
And after she let the devil fornicate with her, making the men impotent.
All right, and the first 1970 movie I have is probably the most interesting of the bunch. More exploitation, less horror, but has some thoughtful moments in it as well. This is The Brutes, a.k.a. Cry Rape, which is a pretty rough name, right? 1970, this is a German film. There's two versions of this one. There's an hour and 21-minute version, which I think was more of an export edition, and then there's like an hour and like 38-minute version of the movie, which is one that has more lines here and there. So I know that I was reading stuff about this movie, and I hadn't seen Cross Iron in so long, but two of the two leads in here actually popped up in Cross Iron as well, which is kind of interesting. If you guys never seen Cross Iron, it's a pretty cool Sam Peckinpah movie, maybe a little underrated. I probably owe it a revisit. But yeah, The Brutes. This is some dark, twisted stuff in here. And I did watch some of the shorter version too to see how it was edited and everything like that. And the shorter edition in the beginning would suggest that a rape takes place, but if you watch the longer version, it's not there. And the longer version of the film also suggests that it shows these two characters kind of interacting more in like a workplace setting, which reminded me of some of the movies from years ahead where you see the characters behind the scenes life before they do the crimes and everything, and you kind of see where they fit in the cog in the machine and everything like that in society. But anyways, and this one you see the dichotomy between the two characters. We have these two kind of guys that are real sleazebags, real trashy people, and they're always out there kind of like looking to score or just kind of exploit women or take advantage of them, and they're just really awful people. What happens is they find this group of friends that are hanging out go-karting, and they get really aggressive with them and end up having one of the girls ends up deciding to go with them for a swim. They take her to this isolated area where it's kind of like, it looks like some industrial area where there's like a pond or like what are these kind of places, like limestone place where they dig out whatever it is, and it's just kind of off the cuff, and they expect to see their friends. She expects to see her friends show up, but they're isolated, and before long, like, they're making these comments about everything. They watch her go swim, skinny dip, and they're just manipulating her and hoping and just being real creeps towards each other, but there's some underlining stuff between them as well. As it goes on, it gets kind of darker and darker until, of course, this kind of nasty rape takes place. But what really made this movie stand out to me was one of the characters. He breaks down the whole moment, what's going to happen to after she goes to the police about the rape. And it is super elaborate and super in-depth, and it's just fucked up. And it feels genuinely what would happen, and it shows all the pressures they put on the rape victim instead of the actual rapist and stuff. All this horrible stuff that they put on the rape victims, almost like they don't want these crimes to be reported. And it's just a scene that was really, I guess, thoughtful is the word to put it, and had a little bit more depth than your typical exploitation movie, and it actually made it stand above what I thought I was going to be. I thought this might be even nastier or something like I Spit on Your Grave, but it's not. It's really not that, even though it does have these dark moments and everything like that. And the interactions between the two rapists and everything, and you think one's worse than the other, but maybe that one's even worse, and nothing really works out with them. And the way it ends is just kind of different too. Like, you're like, oh, it's probably a little bit more realistic. This movie's a lot more realistic than a lot of people would think. And that's tragic. I would like to see a stateside release. I know there is a German version of it by Koch Media, or I'll have to try to get an edition. It wasn't widely available when I looked. Diabolic carries it sometime, but if I ever see it or I ever stumble across it or can pre-order something like that at a reasonable price, under $35 or something like that, I will definitely pick it up. But it is The Brutes, recommended. Not necessarily a horror film, so don't expect to see it popping up on my top 10 or anything like that from 1970. But a super interesting movie nonetheless. Okay, the next one is The Psycho Lover, and this is by the same director of Blood Mania, which also came out in 1970. And I don't have that much to say about Psycho Lover, and I'm not really sure what the hell this thing is. This is like me hitting like that wall on 1970 movies where I'm like, I think I'm done. I'm really close to being the end. I think I'm at 89 after this week, and I'm just like, I don't know if I have much more in my tank to watch any more 1970 movies, if that makes sense. I think besides some rewatches of movies I've already seen, I don't think that, like, like Wizard of Gore and, Queens of Evil, I don't know if there's that much more that I could find that's going to be a hidden gem. So what we have here is Psycho Lover, and right in the beginning, it opens up with this really kind of nasty rape of this, and this rapist has like the stocking on his face and everything. I was like, oh, this is really grim and disturbing. And then after a while, it starts to kind of peter out, and we have this relationship between a psychiatrist and this young girl, and the psychiatrist is obviously one of the main suspects in the who's the rape murderer is one of his patients. So, and there's this really goofy scene where I was like, we're not doing this. Are we doing this? And so, spoiler, this is not a movie I love or anything like that. I don't think it might be worth your time if it's up to you. There's a couple scenes that might be worth your time, but this character, the love interest to the psychiatrist, they're talking, and she's like, I saw this really great movie on television called The Manchurian Candidate, where, and they basically break down the plot of The Manchurian Candidate, and they say, well, he was a sleeper agent, yada, 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 and you're like, you're not doing this. Are we doing this? Is this what we're going to do? And you know exactly what they're going to do. They're pointing out the psychiatrist is going to use his patient as a sleeper agent to do all these crimes, so he's innocent. And you're just like, fuck off, guys. You make it any more obvious. And I'm pretty sure this is a B-movie exploitation drive-in picture, so you don't really expect that much of it. But I just was like, we're not doing this, are we? And there's this really awkward moment, which has to be played for laughs. It has to be. And I really, it has to be like this conversation between the love interest and a police officer, where it's the most awkward dialogue of all time, where they're talking about birds, and I was like, what am I watching here? I literally said that. I was like, what is this? And they're just like, birds are interesting, right? I never said they were interesting. I don't know. I'll just probably put the clip here. I just was like, get the fuck out of here.
Yes, of course. Interesting, aren't they?
Who?
The birds.
Why?
Hmm?
Why do you find them interesting?
Oh, I don't know, the feathers, the colors. Don't you like birds?
Oh, I love birds.
But I thought you said that you didn't find them interesting.
No, I didn't say that. You said that.
Oh, yes, I did say that, didn't I? Tell me, Miss Stewart, has Dr. Alden ever mentioned a Marco Everson to you?
It's got to be played for laughs, right? At one point, the movie gets real psychedelic and weird to like insane level, where it's like this hallucination and everything. It gets all colorful and there's a lot of nudity and everything. And I was like, that's pretty unique and pretty cool. Obviously, a carryover from the 60s. So there's a couple moments worth it. I mean, like the rapes and murders are pretty brutal and dark, and there's that weird psychedelic stuff. Psychological psychedelic. Yeah, that's a new little thing going on there, which I would say that doesn't Carnival of Blood have that weird kind of moment of the psychedelic, psychological shit mixture. I'm coining that phrase, psychedelic, psychological, from 1970. There's a bunch of them. So yeah, I think it has that kind of thing going on. Not a movie I would give a high recommend, maybe a slight recommend. This next one is the movie I'll have the least to say about of all time from the 1970 movies. It's called The Night of Witches. I wanted to check this one out because it played as a double feature with Frankenstein on Campus. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. They're both kind of Canadian cheapies. Night of the Witches is a movie that I watched, and I went to like rethink about what happened or anything to say. And I was like, I could barely focus on this movie. It doesn't help that the picture quality is absolutely dog shit. I mean, it's probably a VHS rip or ripped directly from TV and like recorded 30,000 times, so it's like degraded to shit. That doesn't help, all right? But I just couldn't think of much to say about it. It's part crime, part horror, part comedy. I don't know what the hell, part folky kind of music. The music, I think, was the most interesting point, but this kind of follows the story of a preacher who's kind of a, a scummy guy, kind of a, snake oil salesman, make money, take advantage of people deal. In the very beginning of the movie, he kind of like weasels his way into and taking advantage of this woman. Really gross. But anyways, what happens is there's this covenant of witches that live on this island. There's also this weird kind of like a guy who shows up who wants to buy an island or something, and it cuts back to this guy who's like, buy it. I don't know what the hell's going on with it or whatever. There's this weird side point where they want to sell or buy an island or something, and then we have this preacher also kind of infiltrating this group of witches, trying to take advantage of them. But they're also doing these sacrifices, and all this weird folk music is popping up here and there, and I just don't know what the hell's going on. There's some sex scene, there's some dance rituals. I don't have anything to say. I don't remember really much about this movie. It didn't really stand out to me at all. It is a movie where it's like, Dave, what are you doing here? You're not even. I don't have anything to say. I don't have any memories of it. It was impossible to pay attention to. It's not the worst movie. It's just the most forgettable movie of 1970 for me. And that, again, maybe if it was remastered or had some context to it, I could give it some love or find something to talk about. But I really don't have much to say. I feel like this was impossible for me to pay attention to with the quality picture I saw of it. So, this is where I'm getting at, to the point where you're like, yeah, maybe it's close to hanging up, right? I'm not. It's close to hang up the new watches for 1970. But yeah. I just can't give this a recommend. Frankenstein on Campus and Night of the Witches would have to be the worst double feature of all time. Yeah, I mean, watching them, I know they're driving double features for people to fool around and everything, and that's exactly what this is. Okay, the last one from 1970 is a rewatch from the Hammer movies, and this is The Horror of Frankenstein. Who did this one? Jimmy Sangster directed this one. This is a Hammer picture, the second to last in the Frankenstein series from Hammer. Jimmy Sangster started off as more of a writer. He did direct a couple movies here and there, but he wrote a lot of the bigger Hammer stuff early on in the Hammer kind of horror kind of cycle. So this one stars Ralph Bates, who's a really good actor. He pops up in a couple Hammer movies, and most notably for me, Dr. Jekyll's Sister Hyde, which he's pretty good in. He has a handful of others he's in, including Taste the Blood of Dracula from this year. This one also has, who is it? It's John Fitch, who pops up in Alfred Hitchcock's Frenzy, good actor. And I'm sure there's some other people in here. David Prowlis, who played Darth Vader on set as the big kind of Darth Vader. He also plays Frankenstein. I think in the next one is a different kind of monster. Frankenstein's monster he plays. So yeah, it's got a nice little cast in here. I'm sure there's some other character actors I'm forgetting that pop up in here. Who else is Dennis Price? I do want to mention Dennis Price because he's a lot of fun. He pops up in a couple Jess Franco movies and a couple other Hammer films. So The Horror of Frankenstein was a movie that I didn't absolutely love when I first saw it, but you got to remember when we were watching those Hammer movies, watching a lot of Frankenstein and Dracula movies back to back to back, and we're used to the Peter Cushing Frankenstein cycle, right? This is the only one of the Frankenstein films that doesn't have Peter Cushing in it. It doesn't follow Peter Cushing as Dr. Frankenstein. This is essentially a remake of Curse of Frankenstein, the first Frankenstein in the Hammer movie. So we follow Ralph Bates as the young Victor Frankenstein, as we see him kind of like with his father going to school and everything. And this is darkly comedic. It plays more of as a comedic tone where, Victor Frankenstein's going around sleeping with a lot of people and just being very kind of exploitative. Although Peter Cushing has a sexual nature in the first Curse of Frankenstein movie, which is kind of shocking for Peter Cushing in a movie, right? I can think of that and Corruption. I think there is a sexual nature to his crimes in that movie, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe not. Maybe he's just doing it to save his wife. I can't remember. It's been a long time since I've seen Corruption. Just remember it being very sleazy. So, so Cushing in Curse of Frankenstein has a sexual nature. Just a couple scenes, which felt really crazy. And there's a couple other ones he has it too. This one fully embraces this sexual nature. Ralph Bates is more of, obviously, more young man, a virile man, I would say, I guess, in comparison to Peter Cushing. So, in this one, he's sleeping around a lot more. And we see, it go over his entire life. And it's not a, super long movie or anything like that. So right off the bat, we kind of do a lot of the stuff that we saw in Curse of Frankenstein, but it's darker and more mean and more sexual. And I would say probably a little bit more gory. The comedy is okay. Sometimes it's a little too dark and just mean-spirited it doesn't come across funny to me. Dennis Price is probably the funniest part of the movie. He's a gravedigger, kind of your typical Burke and Hare character where he's digging up bodies for Frankenstein and giving them to him because obviously Frankenstein wants to make people, make the Frankenstein monster make people, make the Frankenstein monster, of course, and there's funny gimmicks. So of Dennis Price sitting there while he makes his wife dig and everything like that, and he's just eating, drinking wine and eating. Dennis Price is a fun character actor. But this one, rewatching it, I enjoyed it a little bit more. I guess I caught some of the humor and everything a little bit better, and just not comparing it directly to the Peter Cushing ones was a it was a bit unfair originally, but watching it this time, I enjoyed it a little bit more. I like this one now. Yeah, and Ralph Bates is a good actor. I've always liked him. And the ending is weird. I feel like it's kind of a letdown because we don't get a direct sequel to this one. So that probably also could be some of the problems with this one. That, like, I know that it ended right there, carrying it on, and we went back to Cushing series. So, but all the Frankenstein and Hammer movies don't have any direct correlation between them except Curse and Revenge. And then after that, they kind of scrap it, which I always kind of disliked. I wish they would continue the story. But how long can you keep it alive? Anyways, this one I think is decent, and I laughed. I made a joke about Frankenstein and Campus having a little bit of that kind of Reanimator kind of vibes, and this one does too. But I mean, that is a Frankenstein story, but the sexual nature of it and everything, and sleeping around with the dean's daughter and everything reminds me of Reanimator. But anyways, Horror Frankenstein, I would recommend checking it out from 1970. Cool movie. All right, we're here for Blindspot. This was your pick.
Technically, your pick.
Well, no, it's not. You picked it for...
I gave you a choice. You picked it.
No, it was your turn to pick a movie. You gave me two choices. You didn't do a You Ain't Seen. You did a Blindspot, which is one that you haven't seen that you wanted to watch.
Yeah.
And you picked The Crow, which I am familiar with. I have seen when it came. I know. You gave me two choices. One weird anime I never heard of in my life, and The Crow. He didn't even give me like an anime like, why don't you do Wicked City? I'd be like, Wicked City. I've never seen Wicked City. I'd love to watch Wicked City. So we get The Crow, which is a very famous movie, obviously plagued by tragedy in the making of. Made in 1994. David Scow, I think, was one of the screenwriters on this. I think he worked on, he worked on Leatherface, a third Texas Chainsaw Massacre film. So The Crow stars Brandon Lee. He died tragically on the filming of it. He's the son of Bruce Lee, who also died tragically, which is really kind of upsetting to think about that, the whole thing, with Bruce Lee and Brandon Lee.
Didn't Bruce Lee get a cold?
I think he took an allergic reaction to an aspirin or something along those lines. Some minor medication. So in this movie, we also have Michael Wincott, David Patrick Kelly, Ernie fucking Hudson, Tony Todd. We have the woman in the very beginning of True Romance. Yes. She's also in Unforgiven. She has a nice little role in here as a drug-addicted mother. Who else pops up in this? I know there's some other familiar faces throughout the movie.
What's his name?
Oh, John Pilato.
Yeah.
Basically the guy who Danny DeVito and him competed for roles their entire career. He also actually played Danny DeVito's brother in It's Always Sunny, which was the best casting of all time. Mm-hmm. So he's also in a bunch of Coen brother movies. He's a pretty famous actor. I'm a fellow shaman. Have you ever seen Big Lebowski?
I've seen Big Lebowski.
He said, I'm a fellow shaman. Why are you following me? That's him.
Is he in Total Recall or no?
No, that's the other guy who's not Danny DeVito or John Pilato. Recall. So, okay, The Crow.
Who's the guy in Congo? Is that Pilato?
No, I don't remember Pilato being in Congo. Which character in Congo?
He's got a one-liner. I think at
the
airport.
You talking about Joey Pants? Joey Pantaloni or whatever? I think that's who you're talking about. He's Ralphie in The Sopranos. He was also one of the brothers in The Goonies.
Tony Soprano in this one? Or was he in a different movie?
He's in True Romance.
He's in True
Stop,
Romance.
for the love of God. This is the worst time. I might even have to restart the review if this goes on any further of you asking which bald character actor is who. Okay.
All right.
So here we
go.
The Crow. And Tony Soprano is James Gandolfini. He's in True Romance. He was also in Perdita Durango. So we're in The Crow. Okay, this is the most 90s movie of all time. It's also super teenage angst, super cheesy gothic. Yeah, and it's such a product of its time. It also, obviously, they had to finish this movie probably without the footage and coverage they need. I don't know. I know exactly the moment he did die, but I don't know what point it was shot in order or anything like that. So Brandon Lee is basically on Devil's Night. Him and his fiance are brutally murdered, and a year later he is brought back by a crow or something like that. And he's dressed up in this makeup, this goth makeup, and he starts to take vengeance on the four goons who did it. One of which is actually Floyd D from True Romance. It's funny, there's two people from True Romance who play bit roles in that pop up in this. I think True Romance the same year before True Romance, maybe 93. So yeah. Anyways, the editing is super bizarre, and they keep cutting to the scene and everything, and it's just the bad guy motivations are super strange. We have Michael Wincott, who's the main leader. Michael Wincott has this basically memorized for his great voice. He also is in Dead Man by Jim Jarmusch. Great performance in that movie. And he basically has Joker kind of motives where he's like, we want the chaos of the world. And it's just like, everybody's way too old to have that mind mentality, so it comes across really cheesy. And like, we have David Patrick Kelly, who's probably approaching his like 40s, and he's just like, he's acting like a 20-year-old anarchist or something. It's really strange motivations here, but the whole world is just a strange kind of a world and everything like that.
Well, I mean, like, they kind of, like, hint that there's some sort of, like, I don't want to say gentrification plot, but, like, something about, like, landlords and taking over areas for something. And then when you get to the main villain, he's like, I just like chaos. And, you know, just...
Well, there's slumlords and everything like that.
Yeah.
And John Pilato is a pawn shop guy who works with Michael Wincott. And the set designs are really strange. It's like a mixture of miniatures and everything.
Right.
And it's such a strange oddity how it's filmed and everything. It's like one of these 90s movies where you're like, did Tim Burton direct this? And like, I get a lot of that impression, like in a lot of movies from the 90s, like they have that Tim Burton flair. As far as the acting is concerned, there's a couple that really stand out. John Pilato's absolutely hilarious. Ernie Hudson, probably the best, most solid performance in the movie. He plays a detective who initially was on the case. Ernie Hudson is just always never seen him turn in a bad performance. Always very likable, even as Leo Glenn in Oz.
Yeah,
and
he's
of
always
course,
fun.
Winston Zeddemore in Ghostbusters 1 and 2, and Congo. I think he is in Congo. He is in Congo. You brought that up. So yeah, anyways, Ernie Hudson's the man. Big fan.
Tony Todd's okay.
Yeah, he's all right in here.
Doesn't get a whole lot, though.
Every character in this movie feels like they're from a different movie. Like, Tony Todd feels like a villain from a film noir and everything like that. It's such a bizarre... There's lots of shooting and gunplay, but it also feels aimless in where it goes, because originally we have him tracking down the 4 people that did him wrong, but after that's kind of settled, he's really just after this big kind of like bad guy that has no motivation for even giving a shit about the 4 goons that are killed. He has no loyalty or no love for anybody, so it's just almost like he just wants an arch nemesis to make him feel somewhat alive.
Yeah, you know, when he kills all the 4 goons, like, he's done. The crow, like, I think he even goes back to the grave. He's like, but the main villain ends up kidnapping
a young girl.
A young girl that's somehow related to the Crow.
And don't want to be negative here, but her performance is rough.
Oh, she's dog shit. I'll even say it. I'll make fun of a fucking child.
But like I said, this movie it obviously had problems. Like when it came to like trying to complete it. As far as Brandon Lee is concerned, he's always been great at action. I remember him being in Showdown in Little Tokyo. I don't remember too much negativity about his performance in that. And I don't know if I've ever saw Rapid Fire, which he did a couple years prior, or maybe around the same time. His career was very short lived, obviously. Yeah. But the way he handles some of these dialogue and everything is not perfect, but let's be honest, the dialogue isn't really perfect either. This is a movie that if you saw it at a right time growing up, I saw it young too, it never connected with me. I never disliked it. I never really liked it. It was just kind of there, and I understand why it has a real soft spot for some people. I don't have that soft spot for it, and I really can't stand the weird editing techniques in the movie. I think it's painful, and I think that this movie's editing techniques would be used later on, all the way up until like the mid 2000s, and that's why some of those movies are so painful for me to watch.
You know, it's one of those things where like this script I think definitely need to be like worked over a handful of times. I think they honestly went with a first draft. I'm
sure there's a rich history on this movie. A lot of people know
I'm
because
sure.
It's a haunted movie, a cursed movie, if you
right. will. You know, how can you do reshoots? You know, you might film the scene for, you know, something, but it's like because, you know, every time you film a movie, you know, you're done, and then you go back and you film like the same scene.
We're not 100% sure of how much stuff was cut or not finished or anything like that, or but like they did cover it up fairly well. Like I never felt like Brandon Lee wasn't there, even in the action scenes, and I'm sure there's probably a stand-in at certain
there
points.
There might be a stand-in for like the
big shootout.
The big shootout. And I only think that it's
that's initially where he did, I believe, get killed.
Right. Because he, you know, spoiler, but he comes into the boardroom and everybody's at a table. They have all the money.
And they're all stuntmen, clearly.
They're all stuntmen. Like, you can, like, recognize the
like, I'm like, that guy
them.
looks familiar.
Right,
right. Clearly stuntman.
Like, that's the Asian one. It's, so they have, like the table all set up, and then, like, chaos erupts, you know? So I'm, like, wondering if during the chaos, if that's the stuntman or a double, because I can't imagine destroying a set
and then
to film it and then resetting it back up.
Well, you
for that
never know
one.
with Hollywood movies.
Yeah,
what
you don't know. They probably had 2 separate rooms or whatever. I'd say that the biggest problem with the movie, like story wise, is the order that it's shot in, because it opens up with the murder.
You mean where they do it? Yeah, I really wish they would have had that as not cut flashbacks to. Just do the whole thing straightforward, or reveal it at the end.
Exactly.
In terms of a lot of other kind of revenge stories, but they kind of follow it, and they do it the Quick and the Dead style, where there's a bit by bit by bit. Although Quick and the Dead's much better done, because there's little images that trigger it. So like the sheriff badge and stuff, the marshal badge will trigger a memory and stuff like that. It just a little bit flows better. And this tries to do it, but it just doesn't work as well.
I think The Crow has some sort of like ghostwriter, or is it ghostwriter skill where
penance stare. He does the penance stare.
So I guess they have that, but I think that it would have been more impactful if maybe not even so much the reveal at the end, because I mean it's not like a big reveal, but really if they took all those flashback sequences, because they have Brandon Lee and the girl like interacting, and that should have been the first 10 minutes of the movie. You get to the murder, and then it happens.
Because, I mean, like, I guess it's fairly obvious what happened right away. It's not like a reveal, so I don't know why they decided to tell it in this storyline. If they would have kept it more secretive, or just out forwardly,
like more, chronologically.
One or the other. This way, it's just, like, sloppily squeezed in there, and it's just obvious already what happened. I just don't think the impact is there for me, unfortunately.
It does, I think, fall flat. Joe Pilato?
John Pilato.
John Pilato. His performance is
Pilato. Something.
Yeah, his performance is fantastic. I kept saying it should have been Danny DeVito the whole time, but that's just my own personal penchant for Danny DeVito.
I said this poor guy has been fucking going. Him and DeVito have been competing for roles for years. Just let him have the Crow.
But
DeVito doesn't need 2 weird gothic movies. He already got Batman Returns.
That's the best movie ever made. But I think because he has like a nice chunk of scenes, and when he's out of the movie, it's kind of like
And the way he's out is the generic fucking.
It is.
I'm the bad guy. Gotta do something real stupid. I wish we could end that trope, unless there's a legitimate reason why the bad guy's gonna do it.
The bad guy in this reminds me of like Diet Sephiroth. I can't explain it any other way. It's just like long hair, just kind of kooky with a samurai sword. And like,
his weird incestuous thing with his half sister. She's fun.
I guess Sephiroth has that with his mother, but you wouldn't know that.
I wouldn't know that.
Which is really weird. This guy never played Final Fantasy VII. Could have named probably 3 characters. He could, but you don't have to do it.
Cloud, Sephiroth.
That don't count.
It counts. You just said it. I mean, I like the movie. I don't love it. The soundtrack is infamous, because we have like 9 Inch Nails in here and The Cure and stuff right off the bat. I feel like everybody bought this soundtrack and listened to it a million times, and probably put it on in the background and listened to the soundtrack over the movie.
Well, I mean, this movie I think inspired a whole look for like literally the next 15 years. I think that there's like a direct connection between this and the Joker. I mean, I think that the Crow actually looks like Dr. Frankenfurter and the Joker combined.
Well, I mean, the Joker obviously was before this, but you're talking about the latter-day versions of the Joker?
I'm talking about the Heath Ledger Joker.
Okay.
I think that his makeup is directly inspired by the Crow. I think a lot of stuff is directly inspired from the Crow. Good movie or not.
Except Sting from WCW. He was completely original.
Completely original. Not to be confused with the Sting from Dune. From Dune, okay. Also a singer. It's always the wrong Sting when I want it.
I wonder if I should look in the books for this. I didn't even think to check.
We don't have
I bet
to
it's
read
in the books. I guarantee it's in the books. You stay there. I'm going to look it up and just laugh. Keep talking about it.
Well, what else can I talk about? It is edgy as hell.
To the cringe
right.
max.
Like, had I seen this when I was like, 12 to 14,
You didn't? Oh yeah, this is the first time. I can't believe you didn't see this.
It was one of those movies I always wanted to watch, but I just never really got around to it. And I mean, let's be honest, there's better movies out there. Also, I've always been an animation fan, so you know, I always shunned non-animated movies.
John Stanley's Creature Features is not in the other book. This is The Crow, 1994, 3 out of 5. This is the film that claimed the life of its star Brandon Lee, son of Bruce Lee, who was accidentally shot on the set in early 93. It's a dark, surreal version of James O'Barr's comic book series about Eric Draven, a rock musician who is murdered and returns from the dead to wreak revenge against the sleazy criminals who did in him and his fiancée. The title refers to a supernatural bird that leads Draven through his body. Vengeful experiences. The plot is nothing special, but the film is notable for its atmosphere, a decaying city with wet, glistening streets, kinetic editing, dynamic action pieces, and a unique directorial style of Alex Proyas. Not a work of art, but certainly an example of bravado filmmaking, script by David Scow and John Surley, Ernie Hudson, Michael Wincott, Miramax. And there's a sequel. Crow City of Angels.
I heard there's a few sequels.
Yeah, I think there actually is. But yeah, I mean, like, it is obviously important in the terms of cinema and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely worth a watch. The Crow is my favorite bit. I just like blackbirds. I think that they're neat. It's got all the blackbird tropes. You know, they peck out eyeballs. Brandon Lee quotes the raven, which I have fully memorized.
We don't need to hear it. I would say skip The Crow. And if you want a different revenge tale, watch Shrunken Heads.
No,
I'm just kidding.
Hey,
stop. Shrunken Heads actually feels a lot like The Crow, which is really weird. It's like the kid version of The Crow, but for some reason it ended up in rated R because Richard Elfman directed it.
Probably.
Anyways, I don't watch Quick and the Dead if you want to watch a revenge movie from this week.
Oh, Quick and the Dead, because we watch. I'm not going to stand in for that review, but that was a fun movie.
So if I have to rate this, I'm gonna have to give it a 6.5 out of 10.
It's not a bad rating.
I don't love the movie, and I'm only giving it higher than I probably like it because I think it's a little bit more important than I'm giving it credit for.
I mean, you know, I completely agree. Like, I would rate Dawn of the Dead like 2 stars out of 5, but like realistically, it's probably
we're talking about
a
the
3.
fucking Crow, which is don't make me fuck that up. It's a turd in comparison to Dawn of the Dead. The Crow is a fucking turd.
It's a turd.
It's a turd in comparison to Dawn of the Dead. It's a turd.
I'd give it a 4 out of 5. You know, because I do that 5 scale.
All right, yeah.
You know?
I could sit here and quote every line from Dawn of the Dead. And I could tell you one line from The Crow, and I'd have a half smile on my face. It can't rain all the time.
That's another thing that confused me. Is like he was in a band, but like the bandmates are
they never bring it up. They never mention it.
Around.
It's not. I feel like this is an uncompleted movie, like Dune or something.
Oh, it's definitely an incomplete movie. Actually, I think like my next pick. Yeah, you get one pick next week, but my next pick is also an uncompleted movie. I say uncompleted because it was complete, and then Michael Eisner tore it to shreds, and they had to.
Well, we're not talking about your pick. You don't get a pick right now. It's my pick. We're talking about my
You
pick.
technically picked The Crow. So...
I didn't pick The Crow. We're not doing this. If I'm not getting screwed on my pick. Don't clap. It screws up the Tascam. Anyways, I am going to. Have you seen King of New York?
Yes.
Have you?
I don't. Is it about like a monkey?
No.
Is it about like a baby that like crawls out into construction?
Are you talking about Baby's Day Out? Why would that be The King of New York? The King of New York is a Bel Ferrara movie with Christopher Walken. Have you seen it? It's a crime movie.
I've seen Batman Returns with Christopher Walken.
No,
and
but
he was technically the king.
We're gonna do King of New York.
King of New York, it is.
Yeah. So
that's not a Halloweeny movie though.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
You've seen Something Wicked This Way Comes, right?
Yeah.
Well, let's do the Halloween movie. Why don't we do a Blindspot and do Watcher in the Woods? The Betty Davis Disney movie.
Oh, yeah.
I've not seen that. Let's do that. We'll do King of New York down the line after we get out of the Halloween spirit.
Right.
Sound good?
Yeah, because we have to pick Halloween movies for the next couple of weeks, and I got my pick, and it's
All
not
right,
technically
so we're gonna pick
a Halloween
Watcher in the
movie.
Woods.
Is Watcher in the Woods a Halloween movie?
It's kind of spooky, and there's woods, and it's got Betty Davis.
So we have to pick spooky movies with Betty Davis for the next 6 weeks. All right,
we're done.
Done. Bye.
Okay, let's get into these questions, comments, and concerns, and all that stuff. Basically, last week I asked you for any possible new segments or a way to improve the show. Claire Bear, Jeremy made me chuckle when you said during the time The Craft came out, you were a creepy little goth girl. It's nostalgic for me, too. I heard a while ago that the chick that plays Rochelle that is in Half Baked now reads tarot cards at Echo Park in L.A. Cool. Ken Coakley, your show is so close to perfect that I couldn't really think of any improvements. I would like to see you do a spotlight on the actor, director, writer, novels. I would also like to see the movie room again because I can't find the episode that had the last one. I just remember that it was this year. Even though it isn't on the show, I would like to hear more film commentaries. I've only heard Day of the Dead one, and it was great. I want to have my own YouTube channel doing reviews and commentaries, and even though I have been complimented by people about my movie knowledge and hope that I can translate it to YouTube as well, as you translate your vast movie knowledge every week. Thank you very much. I do make mistakes. Sometimes you make mistakes being live in there, and you've brought up a lot of points. You seem to know quite a bit about movies. Thank you for the kind words and everything like that. I would always love to do a director spotlight and everything like that. Chaz Ultra, great pickups and thoughtful short reviews as always. One short comment. The Missing Dune documentary was not canceled because of legal reasons. The documentary team needed more time to finish the feature. Arrow Video did not want to postpone their current release and decided to not include the documentary therefore. The German Koch release was postponed by Koch because they wanted to include the feature and their forthcoming release will actually include this documentary. Greetings from Germany. Chris. Oh, that sucks about Arrow. Hopefully they'll release it on its own, maybe possible. Isimicio, I need to know which school Jeremy went to since his science class decided to show the craft. That sounds gnarly as hell. I salute your teacher for having good taste. I wonder if they tried to make it scientifically relevant or they were just like, hey, here's a random cool 90s flick about witchcraft. Enjoy, kids. I went through the goth phase as well and witch/Wiccan phase, but I never did that full-blown black makeup thing since I don't know how to apply makeup to save my life. Guess if I had to think of something, maybe an out and about segment that is relevant to movie hunting for movie deals. Your show is great as it is, so no need to make any real improvements. I actually don't typically go out and about anymore and buy stuff. All the family videos closed around here, and the Allieds and the used places, they don't really carry that much that interests me, to be honest. I have such weird taste and have such a lot of movies anyways that I don't. And when you come across something like that, they're usually charging 2 times as much as it's worth. So it's hard. Being in Toledo is not a hot spot for movie collecting. Ilk Vomit, R.I.P. Norm MacDonald. R.I.P. indeed. And then we have Hunger for Horror. I can't believe I still haven't seen Dune. Me either. I'm just kidding. Ilk Vomit. Hararo Nakajima, who portrayed Godzilla through the first 12 Godzilla films, is also suited up in a space amoeba as a giant squid, Gazura. This is also the first kaiju film produced by Toho, made after the death of legendary effects artist Ichu Tasabura, who passed away in January of 1970. So basically he's talking about the movie I talked about last week, Space Amoeba. Gary Turley, love from the UK. Cold War Creatures, yes, got one. Can't wait for Monday. The Thing 4K Special Edition Slipbook Poster Art Cards, 88 Films, Story Ricky Deluxe Edition Slipbook Poster. He's basically mentioning some new upcoming releases. Definitely want to grab Robo Tricks and Story Ricky from 88 Films. Monday they're going up for pre-order. The pre-order goes live. Nick Mua, I enjoyed the review of The Craft. This movie proves that 90s did have some decent thrillers besides Scream. Some ideas for possible segments. Compare some of the releases of movies from which you decided to double or more dip, and show that owning multiple copies of the same film is not a waste. Good idea. A behind-the-scenes look at your weekly show. A spin-off featuring Mrparka's cats? Not gonna happen. I'm just kidding. Yeah, but the behind the scenes could be interesting, I guess. Questions. Need some movies where the plot holes just took you right out of it? For me, it's 2009's Orphan. I'm dreading that upcoming prequel. High Tension. I know I like High Tension, but still, it's I don't care how crazy you are, you can't be in 2 places at once. And people are unreliable narrator, but I know I passed that for some movies, but it's been so long, I just remember being bothered in High Tension. So anyways, I'd have to give High Tension a rewatch and see if it still feel that way. So which is the best book to screen adaptation you've seen? It could be any genre. One off the top of my head, it's not the best screen to book adaptation. I know that a lot of The Shining is great, even though it's not it's not a well adapted screenplay from the actual movie, but I love it. I think it's better than the book, if that makes any sense. Christine. There we go, Christine. I read Christine, and I love that they use the rock and roll music and everything before every scene, but the book gets too silly for a movie translation. I know a ghost eating a piece of pizza would be very stupid for John Carpenter to direct. I can't see John Carpenter somehow handling that well. I like that he cut out some of it. I like that he made the car, the Plymouth, come right off the assembly line evil. I love that. It gives it that why the hell not presence. So I'm going to say Christine. And then what else do we have? Gwen Plain. Hey, Dave, have you watched James Wan's Malignant yet? Going Blind. I think you'll like it. I did. Loved it. David Luton, off the top of my head, a section where Jeremy has to watch all the films he lists and you ain't seen. Bring back the weekly Western. I did one this week for you. A director's spotlight where you examine the filmography of a chosen director by reviewing one of their films a week. I do want to do that eventually. Sorry. Been talking way too much. Ron Munster, I know there's more to you than just horror and cult films. I'd like to see some kind of spotlight where you highlight and talk about a film from different genres that you love. I know you love Young Guns, so that's a film I would definitely like to see. Geez, I forgot to put see more. Sorry about that, Ron. Sometimes I do that. I didn't do it for anybody else, but I did it on yours. So, yeah, I definitely would love to do more genre films. I try to branch it out and do some here and there. I do cover a lot of new releases, so a lot of new releases that I do cover are horror films, though. So, Derek B, top 5 recommendations from a different genre. Very cool. Justin Patrick, can we get a whole episode of you ranting? Possibly. Derek B, that would be amazing. Philip Hinton, review the movie TerrorVision, classic. Love TerrorVision. I've covered it years back. I'll probably rewatch it eventually. Peter England, I've already said it some years ago. Every week, a James Bond review, from Dr. No to Spectre. I don't know if I can handle that. I will watch some Bond movies eventually. I've seen a couple. Jordan Bibby, maybe one non-horror film a week or a theater watch. I would love to do theater watch, and I live right down the street from theater, walking distance. I really should do it. So basically, I think I asked this question before, but I probably didn't do it on Facebook. Best ensemble cast. Since I covered True Romance last week, I covered The Thing this week, I covered Quick and the Dead this week. Best ensemble cast you've ever seen, your personal favorite, whatever you want to do. So I guess, you know what, one thing I want to mention too, I am going to play the Thing trailer in full. For the Thing review, because I think that is one of the best trailers of all time. It doesn't spoil that much in the movie. It's something new. We found something in the ice. We found something. It's genuinely creepy. It's fucking perfect. I'm going to play that trailer in whole just because I like people to see how trailers like that, you can do a trailer right. I know a lot of people don't watch trailers now because they don't want it spoiled, but that Thing trailer is perfect. So anyways, we're going to hop into that update. Okay, we're going to hop into this update real quick. First up is the Black Cauldron from the Disney Blu-ray exclusives. I don't think I've ever seen the Black Cauldron. Jeremy's a big fan. I've heard that it's got obviously had some problems making this one. Look forward to checking this one out eventually. I'm sure I will. Kind of a classic, I guess. So then we have Something Wicked This Way Comes, which is the reason I made a Disney Blu-ray exclusive. I became a member anyways from the original. There's a couple movies I wanted, but I was like, well, I stayed a member because I knew Something Wicked This Way Comes was going to get a Blu-ray release. This is one of my favorite movies as a kid growing up. I adore this one. Cannot wait to watch the Blu-ray. Probably going to wait till around Halloween for it. Yeah, love this movie. Big fan. Then we have The Watcher in the Woods, which we're going to cover for next week. I've never actually seen this one. It'd be a blind spot. I know this one had some weird kind of behind the scenes what happened to, alternate endings, all that stuff. So yeah, I'm interested in checking this one out. Looks very cool. Betty Davis. And then we have Flight of the Navigator. This is one of these ones that I don't know if I saw as a kid, like Last Starfighter or in Explorers. Like, it's hard to remember which ones I had seen. I do feel like I had seen this one, though. So, yeah, Flight of the Navigator, another Disney kind of exclusive. Very cool. And then we have a couple other ones. Icy Breast from Kino. This one looks like a French kind of thriller. Looked really interesting. Glad I grabbed this one. So, yeah. A good price too. It was on like Amazon for just, I don't know, like $11 or something like that. Good stuff. And then last we have One Crazy Summer, which I grew up watching this one. I always really liked this one. I still need to pick up Better Off Dead, which is the Savage Steve Holland's first movie, and this is the second of the trilogy. There's 3 of them. I'd really like to rewatch both of them. This one I actually think I preferred. I don't know if it's better. I just always really liked this one growing up. So yeah, One Crazy Summer. So I guess we're going to hop back to the video. Okay, guys, thank you very much for watching. And as always, have a good one. All right, we're here for Blindspot. We'll start over.
Okay.